if no Roman Catholics show up, then what I will do is shift into just the outright refutation of the whole natural theology project of Vatican II and the resulting apostasy of the Abrahamic Faith Center as a result of Vatican II. And we're going to go through, in an indirect way, a means of refuting the entire system by literally going through all of the Old Testament references to the triad. In doing this, what we'll end up demonstrating is that there is no such thing as a generic Unitarian God that Muslims, Jews, and Catholics worship together. In fact, if the Old Testament teaches the triad, then that means that the only way to worship God is by acknowledging and worshiping the triad. That would mean that Roman Catholicism contradicts in its Vatican II presuppositions that Muslims also worship the one true God and share the faith of Abraham. And anybody who's debated Muslims, as we've done for the last 5 years, debating all of the top Muslims, except for Hijab, he's the last one, and we've tried to get him to do it too. What I've learned is that there's a commonality, and people say, why aren't you debating all the Jews? Jews don't proselytize, and they rarely debate. But if we undercut the entire project of Unitarianism, then all that's left is the Orthodox confession of the triad in this crucial doctrine that the God of the Old Testament is explicitly the triad. Before we get into this, we don't have to restrict today's discussion just to that topic. I don't expect any Roman Catholic sects to show up, but if they do, we will go to them and let them make whatever arguments they want. They can have the floor for as long as they want to make arguments. We're not debating what you think about me. We all know you hate me. We all know I'm a KGB sorcerer. Yeah, fine, we got it. So let's move into the topics and let's hear your arguments. That's what I want to hear. Now, beyond that, though, a couple points on why this triad thing matters and why we want to use this approach. First point is that using and arguing for the triad in the Old Testament does not mean that there's no admission of differentiation. So, for example, as one Catholic said today, are you saying that the rabbinic sources of the 2nd and 3rd century who admit multiplicity, are you saying that that's the triad? No, that's to demonstrate, as I argued in the Daniel Hakikachu debate, that Judaism in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd century was not monolithic. It was not monolithically Unitarian. And that's why many of the scholars today that we've cited in that debate, Boyarin, Summers, others, Schaeffer, they admit that modern Jewish scholarship is coming to recognize that there's not a strict Unitarian emphasis in the Old Testament as people like Maimonides would assume. So it's actually later at the time of Maimonides that you get this unification and codification of a strict Unitarian idea of God. And as Summers argues, the ancient Hebrew revelation actually demonstrates what he calls a fluidity. So that fluidity is not something invented by the New Testament. They don't have to know the term, quote, triad. Okay, so let's get past these low-level misunderstandings that we hear from people like Trent or whoever else. We're not arguing that they have to understand the Nicene definition of homoousios. All they have to know is that there's Yahweh, his angel messenger who is identified as Jesus many times over in the New Testament, as well as the apologetic of Justin Martyr against Trypho. How does Trypho argue the Trinity? By the way, this is prior to the use of the term triad. Oh, the Old Testament. Exactly. Trypho the Jew is refuted by the Old Testament. As St. Maximus says, the triad enlightened Abraham to worship God 1 in 3 and 3 in 1. So what is common in the Orthodox Church, every Orthodox person who's seen the Rublev icon, probably one of the most famous icons of the Orthodox Church, knows that teaches the Trinity. It's the icon of the meal with Abraham, for those that don't know. And that teaches the triad. It means that Abraham had a meal with Jesus. And Jesus says this in John 5 through 9. Literally the entire argumentation of John 5 through 9 is Jesus arguing with the Pharisees that he was the one at Mount Sinai. He is the one talking to Moses. He's the one eating with Abraham. And by extension, guess what? He's the one that is in Exodus at the top of the mountain when Moses goes up and has a meal. Who's Moses having a meal with? Same person Abraham's having a meal with. Now, Trent would have us believe that they had a meal with them, but they didn't know who they were eating with. They didn't know who this was, and they didn't understand the triad. But later, upon reading this back into the Old Testament, we understand it. As somebody perceptively noted, this is as silly as saying that the people at the event of the Big Nine event didn't know what was happening, but by later newscast, they understood what the Big Nine event was. This is how silly this is. No, Abraham, as St. Maximus says, has a direct noetic intuition of the triad, which, by the way, shows that the Roman Catholic position is further refuted by not teaching the doctrine of the nous. So we're going to open it up. I want to go ahead and get to these people, and if we don't get a lot of that, we're going to go right into, we're going to go straight to Genesis. We're going to redo the talk that I did 5 years ago, which, by the way, went through about 3 hours of text. And upon rereading the Old Testament multiple times since then, since 5 years ago, guess what? I missed a ton. That's the amazing nature of this inspired text, is that you can read through the Bible a million times and you're always going to see new stuff. That's amazing. That's how amazing it is. And excuse me. The good news is that the Manuka honey is helping to break up this cough, so I will not be hopefully coughing as much. So now we're going to go back through the Old Testament, starting in Genesis. Now remember, I've already lectured through the entirety of Genesis. We have multiple lectures years ago on that. I've lectured through the entirety of the Gospel of John. We have lectures on the entirety of that. But now what we're going to do, depending on how this goes, and if we get too many Roman Catholics, I'll just save that for the next stream. We'll just start we'll call it our triad lectures, because Trent has a problem and doesn't know that this term is the common used term amongst the Eastern Fathers for the Trinity. And he tripled down as if this wasn't the meaning of the term, which is laughable. And I think it's great because this has actually provoked this entire thing. And it's going to end up being ultimately, hopefully, a masterful lecture series by God's grace to defend the triad throughout the entire Testament. And in one fell swoop, we will refute the Roman Catholics and the Muslims and the Jews. How's that? Jackie. I said I wouldn't debate the ladies, but we got a lady. Go for it.
Hey, man.
Hey.
I know that there are several people that are trying to come into this space to engage with you. You just quote tweeted me, and I'm going to take the message as far as like personality assaults. But some of my guy friends would like to come in and speak with you in a healthy and helpful manner.
Sure.
Can you please unblock a few of them?
Well, it depends on who they are. Who it is? Who is it?
Well, you said that there were no Catholics willing to engage you, then called me a drunk mom.
No, I made a joke calling you a wine mom. It was a joke.
Okay, well, some of my guy friends would like to be able to come speak. I know Wagner's blocked. I know Tom.
Okay, I just hold on. I just unblocked Wagner and offered him to come in, and he declined.
Okay, well, I just think that in good faith, maybe, less character assassinations would be great.
Okay, you understand that your whole crew, hundreds of people, have called me every name in the book in the last 2 days, and I don't care. And I make one wine mom joke to you, and now you got to have a bunch of white knights come in and defend you.
Again, that's not necessary, but I just think it would be in good faith if you want to have an open dialogue.
It's an open forum.
People. Okay,
that's why you're here.
Unblock some people. That would be great.
Unblock who? Because I unblocked Pine Suck or whatever his name is. He can come in here. So where's all the guy friends? Again, Wagner declined to come in here. Okay, she left. If you're of this party of the guy friends, you're welcome to hop on. Is this you? Or Will, are you one of these people? You notice how they've called me every name in the book for days on end, and I make one wine mom joke, and they're all ready to pounce? I mean, this is so ridiculous. Go ahead, Will. Unmute.
Yeah, I originally was going to come up here to have a conversation specifically about the Rublev remark that you made, but
okay. I mean, you don't think that's true?
Well, I mean, the point that you're making, I mean, well, there is a circularity there, that an icon depicting an event which was an icon written by Christians, typologically inferring Trinitarianism upon an event that happened in the Old Testament.
Oh, okay, so you don't think the Old Testament teaches that?
Well, I mean, it's quite. But also, it's also not clear from the manuscript basis. Just looking at the Ioannine epistles, there are various indications that.
Looking at what epistles?
Manuscript you're handling.
At what? Slow down, dude.
On the Ioannine epistles, it's clear from.
Ioannine? What are you talking about?
The Ioannine epistles.
Oh, John. Mm-hmm.
Right. But, I mean, I was going to have that conversation with you, but I think that...
Okay, well, let's go to the Old Testament itself. Do you think that the Old Testament teaches... Oh, so you're not going to debate that?
Well, I'm not interested in having a debate about the substance of our faith when I think ad hominem attacks are being made in the way that you've just made towards Jackie, because I think it cheapens all of us. So.
Right, so you guys have called me every name in the book for 2 days straight, and I make one joke about a wine mom. I said the wine moms are welcome. And here you are, and so you want to deflect to that. Let's talk about the Old Testament. So look at this. This is what they do. Let's talk about the Old Testament. Does it teach the triad or not? Are you a Catholic? Oh, he left. This is what these people do. So I can't even say all the crap they've called me for 2 days straight on Twitter, which I don't care. I think it's funny. That's why I offer them to come and debate. What does he do? He shows up with the Ioannine. I have to talk about the Ioannine. The Old Testament doesn't I'm so British and stodgy that I can barely talk. Say Christy. I mean, this is a great display of the modus operandi of the average Roman Catholic. Go ahead, say Chrissy.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, good. I was just wondering, do you think it's a good strategy to dare Catholics to come on and block like 100 people at the same time?
Yeah, but
it's a good strategy.
Yeah, it's a good strategy to laugh like that when you're trying to talk.
Sorry.
Yeah, can you take your retainer out if you're going to make an argument?
Sorry, I have a cold, yeah.
No, yeah, but you understand that those are all people that I have debated for the most part?
Yeah, Christian Wagner as well. Blocking him and unblocking him 5 times within an hour.
Yeah, because 5 times one time within an hour because I offered him to come and he declined.
No, it was he showed multiple proofs that it was multiple times. You blocked him and then unblocked him, and they commented on his post.
No, I didn't know. You can still comment on blocked people, dummy. You didn't know that? You know that you can do that on Twitter now. And by the way, what does this even prove?
Sure.
Do you have an argument? So Wagner declined to come. Do you have an argument?
About what? You want to discuss?
So you don't actually have an argument. You just came to whine and bitch about Twitter games. Yeah, it's really funny, isn't it? Because you guys don't have arguments.
Yeah, it is quite funny, actually.
Actually. Have you got COVID? Is that what's so funny? Did you get COVID? Did you get your stabby?
Do you think
Just think this is funny? Yeah, no argument. Exactly. Alex. Wagner declined. I have the tweet popped up showing that he wouldn't come. So this is all the games that these people play. What's up, Alex? This is why I debate. So you see why they get blocked? This is how they act. They get blocked, and then they act like I won't debate them. Because they act like kids. Alex, what's up?
Hey, what's up? Just thought I'd pop on, see what was going on. So, I mean, I don't really have that much of a comment on the whole triad discussion. I just, but yeah, I guess what you posted, like show the church fathers, you know, what they talked about as far as the triad goes, it seemed pretty convincing. But
yeah, exactly.
I just don't have enough. I mean, but I guess I just don't.
It's
have
not
enough
even a controversial issue.
Either way.
It's not even a controversial issue.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, but yeah, either way, I mean, I don't know. It seems like everyone's just kind of gets up a little upset, and feels like their position's being challenged. But
Well, of course, right? But that's why. I mean, you either love what's true. And by the way, to the person in the chat here saying that this is all a bunch of BS. Oh, I'm out. Oh, poor you. Yeah, you got to run away. Yeah, here's the link. I unblocked Pine Suck. I unblocked Wagner, and they wouldn't come.
Yeah.
Jacob.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up?
So first thing I want to say that Christ is King. So hello everyone, and I just want to say that I became Christian like this September. So I'm not the most knowledgeable in this topic, but I don't understand. Like, what's your argument? Is that Catholics aren't real Christians, or what's
No,
the
it
problem?
is not authentic Christianity. Correct. It's a cult.
Okay, so what are you? Are you Orthodox or are
Correct,
you Protestant?
yes.
Orthodoxy.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me, my whole family were Catholics. I'm a Slovakian, so English is not my first language. So
That's fine.
if
You're
you don't
doing good.
understand me well,
You're doing
yeah.
good.
So my whole family is Catholic, right? And I've been kind of brought up with it, but I became really like a Christian only just in September. So I'm not the most knowledgeable, but I would say that Catholics are the ones that actually stick to the faith the closest, also with Orthodox people. So I don't really.
So if they have mutually exclusive doctrines, how can they both have the same faith that they're sticking to? Do you think that praying together with Muslims towards Mecca is the same faith as the Church of 1,000 years ago?
I don't really think there are Catholics that pray with Muslims.
Oh, really? You
Mecca.
haven't seen the popes doing that in the last 2 decades?
Okay, so my thing with
You just said,
Vatican
hold
is
on.
that,
You just said they don't do that.
I saw Pope dancing with transgenders. Like
No.
I don't agree with-
No. Both Benedict and Francis praying in the mosques towards Mecca. You just said that didn't happen.
That's my fault that I didn't know. But can I just explain my opinion on the Vatican?
Well, hold on. Is that the same faith as the church that's calling crusades 1,000 years ago?
I wouldn't say that's true. Yeah.
Oh, so then it's not the same faith.
Well, my belief is that the Vatican is at the pinnacle of the Catholic Church. Of course, I'm a Christian.
That's not
I'm a Christian.
everybody
I
knows
would
that.
call myself. Can I finish?
Everyone knows that, man. That's like Catholic 101. So what do you mean? Of course,
Yeah.
it's at the pinnacle of the Roman Church. But
Okay,
it is the
but
Roman Church.
But the Vatican is filled with Jesuits, and I'm not a Jesuit. I'm a Catholic. I don't take the same oath as them.
Okay, well, what does that have to do? What does that have to do with the Pope praying inside the mosque towards Mecca?
I'm just saying that not everything that popes does, Catholics need to follow. Like, I'm a Catholic, but I don't.
Interesting.
I don't.
Well, why do you
for
think?
example-
Let me ask you a question. Why do you think he did
Yeah.
that, though? Do you think there's any Catholic doctrines that or documents that might back him up doing that?
That's a good question. Like, man, I don't know. Like, I don't really like the Pope that we have right now.
Interesting.
But I'm not a liberal. Like, I respect my leaders. I respect him as the leader of the Catholic Church, right? Even though I don't agree with the many things that they do, I don't agree with Jesuits. Like, they take a Jesuit oath. Like, that has nothing to do with Christ. But I
Interesting.
believe that.
Well, then,
For
so
example-
would that mean that you reject the Second Vatican Council's document and teaching at Nostra Aetate that Muslims and Catholics worship the same God together and that they both share the faith of Abraham?
Well, I definitely disagree with this, that all the Abrahamic faiths worship the same God. I don't
Interesting.
think that's true.
So you have
I
a
don't-
Christian impetus there, but yet your dogmatic teachings of your own papal church deny that. So which one are you going to choose? Have you heard of Nostra Aetate?
No, not really.
Okay,
Can you
this the
elaborate?
document on the screen. You should look it up. Nostra Aetate.
Okay,
It's a
will
Vatican
write it
II
down. Maybe
document.
I can look at it later.
Yeah, you can also look up Lumen Gentium 16, which says the same thing.
Yeah, like that,
Look, I'm not trying to be mean, but we're going to go to Pine Sap, because he wants to talk. Pine Sap, you want to talk about epistemology? I'd like to.
Hey, Jay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, let's go, man. How's it going?
Good. You want to talk about epistemology?
Sure. I mean, I'm more of an ecclesiology guy, to be honest. I can try covering epistemology, though.
Yeah, I just think that if classical foundationalist Thomistic epistemology fails, then the whole Roman Catholic system fails.
Now, explain what necessarily your view of our view is.
Well, for example, John Paul II in Fides et Ratio defines natural theology as reasoning about God without and in no way referencing divine revelation. So this is what led the Roman Catholic Church to dogmatize the idea, particularly that what natural theology is precisely that, right? Reasoning about God without any reference to divine revelation. That seems to assume and presuppose that you're a foundationalist. I've never heard a Roman Catholic that's not a foundationalist. So that means that things like the peripatetic axiom, which Aquinas says he agrees with, or the idea in Aristotle that what is better known by us versus what is better known in itself from posterior analytics or prior analytics or physics, etc., that those are kind of self-evident axioms. That seems to me to be pretty uncontroversial or not even contentious in the Roman Catholic world.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I admittedly, I'll be fully honest with you. Like I said, I'm not much of a studier of epistemology. I kind of talk about its relation to ecclesiology a little bit, but I'm not too well versed yet with like what St. John Paul II or St. Thomas Aquinas wrote on that topic. I'm more about covering sort of the evidences for papal primacy or sort of how the
all right,
the early
fair enough. But I mean, you said evidences, like evidences would go along with evidentialism. So in other words, wouldn't this point kind of go more fundamental than arguing the ecclesiology?
I suppose it would. I tend to just sort of try and look at history and look at, can Catholic beliefs, right? Can, say, Vatican I, for instance, be defended in the first century, the first century, but the first millennium? And, what evidences do we have from, say, the early church fathers, the early church writers, both Eastern and Western, that kind of support that view?
What do you think of the Chieti and Alexandria documents?
Well, I think those documents are not, magisterial pronouncements, but even if I grant that they are, I think they're meant to be more conciliatory, I'm trying to look for the word.
Yeah, I know what you mean, towards the East.
Yeah. Written, right, yeah. Not meant really to be like an apologetical writing that sort of defends our position, but more so a document that is trying to sort of come to a meeting in the middle, if you will,
right,
in order to establish sort of a more ecumenical dialogue.
No, I think that is I think you're absolutely correct. That's what those documents are saying. I guess I'm just curious, like, even if they're not magisterial, like, they still have papal approval. And if they are essentially approved by the Vatican with being these official commissions, like if they're admitting things like Chieti does at the very bottom, that Rome didn't exercise universal primacy in the first millennium, like, how is that not a denial of Vatican I?
Well, what I would say is I would go back to Father Silvestri Berry's The Church of Christ, where he talks about sort of the, universal jurisdiction that the papacy has being a power that the Pope has always had, but not necessarily a power that always needs to be exercised.
So wouldn't that undercut the arguments that you guys make from Clement or from Honorius? Excuse me, not Honorius, from Celestine and others?
Not necessarily. The reason why I say that is because, the Pope really sort of, and I don't mean this in the way that Vatican I would anathematize, like, oh, he's just a supervisor or something like that, right? But in a manner of having this universal jurisdiction versus how he exercises it, the Pope doesn't need to be sort of an autocrat that takes away the role of the local bishop. Even remarked about by Blessed Pius IX around his papacy and around Vatican I, especially after the German bishops, this is in Dr. Ed Shinsky's work on the papacy, the German bishops sent him a document or a pronouncement about how Vatican I did not essentially create like what St. Gregory the Great would have, remarked as the universal bishop, this idea that like all bishops are not somehow like true successors of the apostles. They don't have their own sort of...
Yeah, I'm aware of what you're talking about, and I have the Szyszynski,
Right.
I have the Szyszynski book here with me. But what I'm getting at, though, is that you said that it need not be exercised. But the document actually says that the Roman bishop did not exercise canonical authority over the churches of the East. But you're saying that, well, my distinction there would be that it's a power, but it's not necessarily exercised. So wait a minute, was it exercised in the first millennium, or was it a power he had and he didn't exercise?
I think there might be some confusion over what I was saying. I was not saying that he didn't exercise it at all. I was just saying it's not a power that he needed to necessarily always exercise. Unless it was absolutely necessary to. Because the normal function of, say, a patriarch or a local bishop is that, of course, he'd be controlling his diocese, he'd be controlling his area of jurisdiction. But,
So this papally approved document is incorrect?
Well, I mean, I'd have to see the specific passage that
I mean,
you're
it's on the
citing
screen right here. You haven't read Chieti?
I mean, I've glanced over it. I'm not.
I mean, this
seeing
is
on
a
the
famous
top-
passage that multiple, even PhD Roman Catholics at the time when it came out, admitted that this really undoes Vatican I.
I highly doubt that, and I think quite a bit of people have actually written quite the opposite.
Oh, okay.
I mean, like I said,
so okay,
written as-
but here's the thing about
Sorry,
right, and that's fair.
it's not meant to be
That's fair.
apologetic.
That's fair. No, I understand that, but whether this document is apologetic or ecumenist in its motivation really says nothing about whether or not it's an error that's pretty significant if this is a paperly approved commission. But the reason I always go to epistemology at this point in the discussion is that you said, well, it's not really a magisterial document. I don't really have to put that into the tier or the bins of necessary conscience binding documents or whatever. How, as a Roman Catholic, do you sort out between all the different documents, papal teachings, and so forth? How do you know that you're putting them in the right bins if you've got extraordinary magisterium, universal ordinary magisterium, and ordinary teaching? How, as an individual Roman Catholic, do you know that you're actually interpreting this mass of documents correctly?
Well, I know that I'm interpreting them correctly based on the authority that they're issued with. I mean, Dr. John Joy writes pretty extensively about when certain
So hold on, wait a minute.
magisterial-
So is Dr. John Joy infallible?
Didn't say that he was.
Okay,
but he
so
does
you're
cite
going
from
so
other
to get
documents.
to get the criterion, you're going to a fallible source.
I don't think it's a fallible source necessarily.
Well,
because
Dr.
what
Joy
he's
is now
referencing
infallible?
is
Dr.
a
Joy is infallible?
hermeneutic of understanding
Is Dr.
to
Joy
help
infallible?
guide-
Is this book infallible?
I never said that it was, my friend.
Oh, so he's not an infallible source. So the very criteria is derived from a non-infallible source?
I mean, the argument that you're trying to make is essentially if I'm using any book to sort of have an understanding of
No,
how
it's
the
actually an
magisterium functions
epistemic
or
argument.
operates or what have you, contradicts the view of the church.
No.
But then I can
No,
easily
it's
say
not.
the
It's
same
not.
thing
I'm
about
not arguing it
the
contradicts the
position.
church. No, I'm arguing that you don't have a consistent epistemic principle to know clearly and from which source you're deriving the dogmas and putting them in the right bins. Because you have a giant mass of tens of thousands of pages potentially, right, that would count as part of, quote, Catholic teaching. And so you're saying that, well, I go to Dr. Bill Joy or whatever his name is to pull out these principles, but his book is fallible. So wait a minute. So where's the infallible list of the infallible dogmas?
The infallible list of the infallible dogmas, again, comes from the level at which these documents.
Oh, so there's not a list.
Binding this is on the
So there's not a
conscience of
list.
Catholics.
There's not a list.
All Dr.
So there's
John
not a
Joy
list?
says is here are the signs.
Yeah, so you have three
of the
criteria,
magisterial
and then you're like a Protestant.
criteria that
Yeah,
sets
you have
up.
three criteria from a fallible book, and then you're like a Protestant going through tens of thousands of pages to put it in the right bin.
Bad argument, my friend. He's
It's not a bad
drawing it
argument.
from
It's a
other
devastating
magisterial
argument to your
documents.
position because you don't know
He's drawing
epistemology.
it from documents like Donum Veritatis. Or
It
what
doesn't
have you,
matter. So how do you know that he? How do you know he
or
drew them from the right
Yeah.
documents? That's begging the question. That's circular. You admitted he's fallible.
What you're trying to argue suddenly is that I, as a Catholic, have to turn off my brain
No,
when I
yeah,
understand.
you don't have a consistent
That doesn't make
epistemology.
sense.
No, the argument is that you don't have a consistent epistemology, and you just proved it.
What are you even saying right now?
Yeah,
big
exactly,
dog?
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. So you see how he got mad once he got cornered?
Oh yeah, I'm the mad one.
Yeah, you said, "What am I even saying, bad guy?" And now you're going to the personal attacks.
personal attacks, big dog. You just keep interrupting and stuff like
No,
that.
you're not answering the question because you got caught in a basic circular fallacy about your epistemology.
All I said is that Dr. John Joy references
Is his book infallible?
These documents talk
Is
about.
his book infallible? Is it an infallible source? You went to a fallible source.
That's not even what I'm saying, my
It
friend.
is what you're saying. It's what I'm saying because you admitted the book is fallible. You admitted the book is fallible. You admitted the book is fallible, so you're just begging the question.
So let me guess. If I read Irenaeus, if I read Cyprian in another...
It doesn't matter because you don't have a coherent epistemology.
That doesn't make it a part of our faith.
It doesn't matter. You don't have a coherent epistemology is the point.
Okay, you're just kind of screaming in the void at this point.
Yeah, I'm
What's
screaming in the
incoherent
void.
about it?
You went. Do you want me to explain it to you for the fourth time? Do you want me to explain it for the fourth time to you?
A science book, that's a fallible book, but it can say something true.
Yeah, that's begging the question because it's a you don't know that you have the right things in the book that are infallible. That's the point.
But here's the thing: even if I was to make an error as a Catholic, it would not be a damnable error because that.
You don't even know that. Maybe it is. Right? That's begging the question. You're just assuming that. What's your because you don't have an epistemic criteria. You don't have an epistemic criteria that's consistent. You don't have an epistemic criteria that's consistent. That's the point. Here he goes. Here he goes to the personal attacks. Look at this. You were barely a Catholic. You were barely a Catholic. Basic attacks when he melts.
Man, dude, you are just like an angry little man.
Yeah, I'm an angry little man. He got cornered. Everybody saw his dumb circular argument. And then he immediately goes to the personal attacks. Did I say anything about him personally? I kept calling him back to the basic point. And he starts calling me an angry little man. No, you guys are scumbags. Straight up. Dishonest cults. You're dishonest cult members. That's the champion pine suck that they all wanted me to debate so bad. What's up?
Oh, hey, what's up, man? I'm not exactly a cat. I'm just, I didn't realize that's what, I just thought that was hilarious. I don't understand exactly the topic. My bad. I didn't mean to push the button.
From a point of view. So you notice I kept calling him back to the point on epistemology, and he immediately went to a personal attack. Everybody saw that. I didn't say anything mean to him.
Yeah, that was pretty embarrassing on this.
It was embarrassing, and Roman Catholics are embarrassing. And I will keep embarrassing them. Because this is all they do. Yeah. So people in the chat, why don't you come on? You know he didn't win that debate. You guys are such liars. He couldn't answer a basic epistemological question. He couldn't give me what the dogmas are. He said, well, there's 3 criteria, and go to Dr. Bill Joy's book. Yeah, that's begging the question. Dr. Bill Joy is fallible. So I'm going to a fallible source to have picked out the 3 infallible criteria. And that's why he got so mad and went to personal attacks. Yeah, you guys know he didn't win. You're full of it. He's got his goons in the chat. Any one of you can come on here.
Yeah, this
What's
is
up?
Disgraceful behavior from a lot of these Catholics, and me being one just honestly brings shame to me, honestly, in a way.
Well, why would you be a Roman Catholic?
Well, that's the thing, and we've talked before, Jay, and it's nice to speak with you again. But this is the thing. I'm honestly considering the fact that Roman Catholicism is just a dead-end faith. Like, there's no hope for it in the future. What it is now is what it's going to be like for the rest of the time. And
Exactly.
honestly, yeah,
You're not going to get a trad pope. First of all, Francis and his predecessors have already filled the cardinal, the electors with liberals.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why a lot of these Catholics are coping so hard and every single day.
That's why they're acting out. Correct.
That they'll have it. Yeah. And honestly, I probably am going to start thinking about maybe converting, because at this point I have no faith that Catholicism can even be
saved at this point. No.
Yeah, I agree, and I appreciate those comments. To the people talking smack in the chat, again, oh, I just got yelled over. No. You keep getting pulled back to the thing in question, and if you can't answer the thing in question, that's the point. Here we go, another one. His whole thing is built on a faulty epistemology. That's why I'm going to go to the epistemological argument. Go ahead. Go ahead, St. Bernard.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
So I'm obviously not very knowledgeable on this, so I was wondering if you could sort of try to convince me. You're a Protestant, right?
No, I'm Orthodox.
I'm Orthodox. So could you try to convince me of, pretending from a view that I know nothing about the faith, could you try to convince me of the objectively points where Orthodoxy is better than Catholicism?
Yeah, I mean, the Orthodox Church has maintained the correct doctrine of the Trinity. The Orthodox Church has maintained the practice of the early church of fasting and keeping the liturgy reverent. The Novus Ordo is Protestant and not reverent. The Orthodox Church has not accepted the Vatican II idea that Muslims and Jews and Christians all worship the same God. Nostra Aetate teaches that. It's right here on the screen. These things alone are pretty much enough to show you right away that the Papal Church is a cult.
Yeah, you keep on saying that it's a cult. What kind of things indicated to you that it's a cult? Because although the Novus Ordo Mass may seem like a bit modernist to you, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's cultish.
No, the cult aspect is the manifestation of all the people acting out and acting like complete lunatics who can't reasonably talk through their position.
So I'll try to reasonably talk through my position.
Now, let me give you another example of that cult aspect. A lot of times with a lot of these people, when it comes down to these issues, when they get into the actual documents of their church and the doctrines, they end up fleeing to Fatima and mysticism. That's also, in my view, a cultic element, because once the intellectual aspect of it collapses, then they turn to the mysticism. That's cultic.
I think you're confusing it slightly, because Catholicism does permit a wide range of views on a variety of topics. So it's not necessarily that they're fleeing towards mysticism. It's just that they're choosing to ignore certain dogmas of the church. For example, predestination is one of the areas where the church permits a wide range of topics, and that's why the church necessitates sometimes that it needs to be somewhat lenient on the range of views permitted.
But that doesn't really have anything to do with what we're talking about today, which is topics like the Vatican essentially saying that Muslims and Christians worship the same God. That's simply not true.
No, but I'm getting around to my point, which is saying that the church is not infallible in all the things that it says.
It's infallible in its ecumenical council teaching, and this isn't an ecumenical council.
Yeah, I would say that that's correct, but
well, then you just contradicted, because you said that you don't. So you do think that Catholics and Muslims worship the same God?
I think that's a complicated issue.
Not really. I mean, do Muslims think that you worship the same God as they do?
No.
Okay, so why is it complicated?
I'm clearly out of my depth here, and
I mean, Muslims don't believe in the Trinity, and they hate the idea of the Trinity and the deity of Christ. So they'll very clearly enlighten you on whether you worship the same God as they do, in a not so friendly way. Simon of Trent. Uh-oh.
Hello?
Yep.
You hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Why do you have blocked, what's the name, Wagner? Scholastic Answers. You also have dogs.
I already explained that in the first 20 minutes. Do you have an argument or not?
Yeah, I have an argument, but the thing is, like, you...
I unblocked him and invited... I unblocked him. I unblocked... Dude, listen.
Yeah, no, you choose to fucking pull on...
I unblocked... Are you listening?
So you can,
are you listening?
I don't know, LARP as if you beat them.
You have to LARP as if you beat them. Hey, bro. Listen, bro. You barely got on here. Hey, dude.
In their church.
Hey, Cheech. Hold on a second, bro.
You're just straight up wrong.
You just straight up... This is...
What you use...
more chiefs. Hey, bro, could you bring me more chiefs?
And you say
I want one more taco and 3 burritos, bro.
Answer all that.
Bro.
That's not debating.
See what they do? This is all they can do is get on here and yell and cuss. They're like 13-year-olds. I love it. Yeah, keep it up, Roman Catholics. Keep it up. Good job. Peter. More Chiefs? Hey, bro. Julie, more Chiefs? Yeah, I already answered everything he brought up. The people that he's talking about, I unblocked and brought them on. We brought Pine Sap on. He couldn't answer the argument. Go ahead, Peter. You got to unmute.
Jay, I'm looking forward to your impression of me in a few seconds here. I'm just curious, your epistemic foundation, how is it that you interpret, whether it's scripture or I don't know what the Orthodox equivalent of the modern councils is. I know there's some ecumenical councils. How do you interpret that stuff? What's your epistemological...
Well, I just simply out of hand reject classical foundationalism. I don't think it makes any sense. It's not defensible because it all relies on self-evidence. And can you tell me, prove to me something is self-evident in your system?
I'm not sure how you answered my question there. I'm asking, like, how do you...
Yeah, so I can say things like we have a different epistemology. We have the idea of a direct perception of God through the nous, the heart. We believe in more of a coherence view of truth rather than a foundationalist view. So I'm not saying that I believe everything that a coherentist believes in some secular sense, but I'm saying more of a holistic epistemology, that there's not really anything that's a self-evident maxim or foundation that doesn't presuppose other things. So I believe in more like a web view of beliefs rather than a foundationalist view.
So, like, when you go to scripture, when you're looking at the Old Testament, you're deciding that, like, Abraham was in fact dealing with, like, a triad God or something like that. Like, how do you know you're reading that right?
Well, I believe ultimately the Holy Spirit is who teaches the individual.
You sound like a Protestant to
Interesting.
me.
Right. Yeah, you understand that, but you say that too as a Roman Catholic. The Roman Catholics think that the final arbiter for the individual is the Holy Spirit teaching them?
I don't say that as a Roman Catholic.
Yeah, well, your church does teach that. In fact, Barra argues that all the time. You didn't know that?
No, I'm a Protestant, so...
You're a Protestant.
So, yeah.
Excuse me. So St. Simeon the New Theologian teaches this. But that is a different question from whether or not epistemic holism is true versus foundationalism.
Yeah, you're telling me that, like, you use a web or something like that, but can
right,
you
so
tell me,
the way
like,
that's different, the way it's different is that we would say that whether Protestant, Orthodox, or Catholic, everybody at the end of the day agrees that the way the individual comes to know is through the teaching of the Holy Spirit. Where we all disagree is the means that are used. So the Roman Catholic thinks the ultimate means are the magisterium and the Pope. The Orthodox thinks that the means are not restricted to something like that in some juridical way, but that's actually the totality of the faith, the direct experience of God through the church, the liturgy, the sacraments, the lives of the saints, the church fathers, ecumenical councils, etc. The Protestant thinks that the individual is deciphering this basically mainly through the Bible alone. So where we differ is the means, not the final authority of the Holy Spirit. So the question then is, well, who has the correct means here? What is the traditional Christian teaching of the means of knowing God?
So, but what's interesting to me is, like, when you're going against the Catholic Church here, you're using Scripture as your means to show that, like, there's an internal contradiction, right? Would you use Scripture in attempting to notice, like, an internal contradiction between, like, an Orthodox council and Scripture? Do you think that's possible, or is it not possible for them to contradict?
No, I don't think the Scriptures and the councils contradict.
But do you think it's possible for them to contradict?
No, it would not make sense in my paradigm. That'd be like saying, is it possible that Jesus didn't exist? Well, I would kind of undo my entire paradigm.
So isn't that the same with the Roman Catholics here, that, like, you're assuming your paradigm and arguing against them?
Yeah, do you not understand that you can actually debate between paradigms by comparing the paradigms to see which ones are coherent and can give account for their presuppositions? That's what transcendental argumentation is.
Yeah, but what you're doing here is, like, you're saying that, like, Scripture could find a contradiction in the Roman Catholic paradigm, but it can't find a contradiction in my paradigm. Do you see what's weird about that?
No, there's nothing weird about it because it's two different systems. So the problems in their system are not going to be mirrored and the same from my system. For example, if the papacy contradicts itself, that's a devastating thing to that whole system. If the Patriarch of Constantinople contradicts himself and becomes a heretic, that's not devastating to my system because I have a totally different ecclesiology. So the nature of the system will be the issue that determines whether or not the question is devastating or not.
But the example you just used there is an example of practice. So you're saying, like, in practice, like, I can find a contradiction in the Roman system. But again...
No, in the Roman system, it doesn't matter whether it's in practice or whether it's the scripture contradicting the papacy. Any contradiction would invalidate the system.
Well, that's true, but again, like, in principle, the system itself doesn't admit the contradiction, just like your system doesn't. Like, that's the whole point. What you're saying that in principle, my system can't be contradicted by Scripture, but then you're turning to the Catholic and you're saying to the Catholic, like, I'm
doing an internal critique.
Practice rather than
I'm doing an internal critique of their position on their own grounds. You can try the internal critique on my position as well, but you're not going to find a contradiction. That's the difference. Mine does not contradict, theirs does. That's the whole point.
So you would say that, like, the ecumenical councils would agree with you that there's a contradiction here? Because didn't you just tell me their system is that the ecumenical councils are the deciding factor?
No, I said my system is church fathers, ecumenical councils, liturgy, lives of the saints. All of those things go into...
But you say you're making an internal critique, which means you have to use
their system, dude.
Yeah. So you would have to use their system.
Yeah,
so
did you not hear me do that with the guy about classical foundationalism? That was the whole point.
But if to them the whole
it doesn't matter whether that's it doesn't matter if it's a contradiction. They don't get to just say, "Oh, well, I don't accept it as a contradiction." It doesn't. Contradictions aren't system relative.
I mean, I don't know if the ecumenical council is apparently the authority for them, and so, like, if you
the Pope is they're not. They're not. That's not. You don't even know their position. The Pope is the authority, not the ecumenical councils. That's Vatican I.
I think it's both. Like
it's actually not. It's actually that the Pope is above the ecumenical councils, and the only thing that makes an ecumenical council that is the fiat of the Pope.
All right. Well, I don't know what to tell you. It seems to me that, like, you're at the same time saying, like, I'm going to critique within their system, but then also, like, you're denying their council's interpretations of these things. Like the council.
I don't even think you're not even understanding what the argument even is. Like, if Roman Catholicism is a system that's structured in a certain way such that any dogmatic teaching of the papacy cannot contradict previous teaching, if I show a contradiction, that invalidates that system. It's that simple.
Yeah, if you show a contradiction and then show that, like, by the magisterium they've accepted the contradiction,
correct.
Then
when we've already done that with, I'll give one example right here. Nostra Aetate says that Muslims and Christians and Jews all worship the same God. 1,000 years ago, they called crusades against the Muslims. Now the Pope goes and prays in mosque towards Mecca. That's a contradiction.
Again, like, it seems like you would have to find an ecumenical council that says that that's a contradiction. But
I just cited the ecumenical council. Do you not see that? The damn document is on the screen, dude.
But the ecumenical council didn't say that what.
Yes, it does. It's on the screen in front of your face. Yes, it does.
It talked about Benedict XVI. That's nuts, man.
What are you talking about?
All right. Well,
have you read? Do you know what Nostra Aetate is?
I'm gonna hop off. I gotta go.
Oh, so you don't even know what Nostra Aetate is?
That must be it. I don't know because I gotta go. I'll talk to you.
Oh, you gotta go, right? So he's got to go as soon as he gets pinned down. Yeah. What's Nostra Aetate?
Jay, I'm gonna.
Here we go. Stop. Repeat my name. What is Nostra Aetate?
I'm gonna head out. But if you find,
it's on the screen. What do you mean if I find it? It's on the screen for you. Nostra Aetate, Lumen Gentium 16.
Again, like, if you find an example of,
it's on the screen. That is an. You don't understand that's an ecumenical. Do you understand that's an ecumenical council?
Man, I want to leave, but I also
do you understand that that's an ecumenical council?
Does it talk about Benedict XVI in there?
Are you this dumb? It's teaching the thing that he's acting on.
Interpreted by whom?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. See, it's interpreted by him. Notice the never-ending circle here. Now I can't go and cite his ecumenical councils because it's interpreted by who? Oh, it's me. So once he gets pinned down, he didn't know what Nostra Aetate was. He didn't know what Lumen Gentium was when it's on the freaking screen. From Vatican II, that's ecumenical council. What a bunch of clowns. And he's not even Catholic. He's a freaking Protestant. Why is he trying to argue the Catholic position? He doesn't even know their documents.
Hey, man.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to say a little something about what you're talking about here, because for the last couple of weeks now I've been studying a bit about Roman Catholicism. I read the Szyszynski's Filioque book, and I got a lot out of that. And I watched a couple of the Wagner debates with some other Orthodox people, and I came to the conclusion that the Church of Aquinas and the Church of Pope Pius V, the Church of Lombard and the Crusades, it doesn't exist anymore. And the Roman Catholics that come online talking about how the church is going to somehow go through this renovation where it's going to go back to what it was before Vatican II, it just seems so unrealistic.
Yeah, they live in a fantasy world. They're LARPing.
Yeah, exactly. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before, I watched a video. I think it was put out by this channel called Orthodox Church, and it was just a liturgical comparison between like certain patriarchal churches versus the Vatican and Rome under Francis. And the way that some Roman Catholics will get out of the liturgical abuse argument is just to say, well, this is going on in some strange church out there, some weird priest, some weird
they
bishop.
know it's universal.
Yeah, and I was watching this video, and I saw, like, the liturgy in Russia, and it looked a lot like it should. And then it cut to the Vatican, and Pope Francis was here, and it was literally a bunch of, like, a Spanish or Mexican choir singing a folk song during the liturgy, and my mouth was dropped. I was thinking to myself, how on earth can these trads think that there's ever going to be any salvation for the Roman Church because of the stuff that's going on in Rome now? It's just not
This
fixable.
is why they act out the way they do. They deep down know that it's not going to be fixed because the Cardinals are stacked with a bunch of libs. And so they're just acting out and spurging out because they're losing their minds. Their system has collapsed. The only people left in that system are like people that are totally ignorant or authority worshippers or weird Skittles LARPers on the internet. So, by the way, this is not. This is also people understand that it's actually Pope Francis that oversaw a puppet mouse. I don't know if people know that. Have you seen that?
I think I have. Yeah, there's a one with where he's
it's on my
he's
Twitter.
got performers around him.
Yeah. No. An actual puppet mouse. Not just him at the ceremony where he's got like a bunch of like clown troupe around him. Let me find you the actual papal puppet mask. Let me scroll back to it here.
Yeah, okay, well, another thing is just that, these trads, like, that group out there, like Wagner and all them, I don't really watch them a lot, but they seem to be operating in a reality that just isn't there anymore.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
They talk about Thomism a lot, and I'm always thinking, okay, what is the Thomistic system? How does this
The
work?
Vatican doesn't even care about Thomism.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
They
I was
moved
just thinking to
past
myself, yeah, they threw it out. Aquinas says, I think he's still a doctor of their church, right? But they don't even believe in Thomism anymore.
Right.
And it's kind of like, I think you made a point about saying that the Roman Church into the second millennium became more of a worldly apparatus than anything spiritual.
Yeah.
And it kind of just made me think, man, everything going on in Rome today is the consequences of that. They've stirred up and ravaged Europe to the point where now Europe just completely rejects everything Catholic and tears it apart because of everything that they've put.
Yeah,
Europe
it's an atheism factory. Why would we not think that clown masses are an atheism factory? So here's Pope Francis right here officiating his puppet mass.
Pinocho, no, sí, sentía cosas malas. Pinocho tenía bronca, le hacía daño a los chicos, le ponía chicle en la cabeza, en el pelo, bien lo embadurnaba, le metía el pie para que se cayera. ¿Es un corazón bueno ese? ¿Cómo se sintió?
Oh, there's Pinocchio there. There's Jesus with the puppet mask.
¿Cómo se sintió la Magdalena después que le perdonó todos los pecados? ¿Bien o mal?
Yeah, but their reply to that will be female deacon, right?
We don't. Oh, yeah, exactly. It's like one mistake that. Appreciate that. Yeah, one mistake that a. Jackie wants to come back. What's up? One Alexandrian heretical action.
Hey, Jay, I'm here as the group secretary again. I think that you might have accidentally removed Peter from the space.
No, I intentionally removed him.
What the follow-up question was the source of interpretation. Do you have an answer for that?
So wait a minute. You think that as a Roman Catholic, you can't, or as anybody else, that you can't go and read the documents from the ecumenical councils? I have to go to another interpreter?
I'm not here to debate on his behalf, but I'll relay the message from the Protestant. That was his question.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Mm-hmm. Martin.
Nuestra gente cercana, si nosotros le hacemos un favor, un bien.
We got Raggedy Ann. Who else we got there? What's up?
Hey man, it's like cool to see you here fighting with the ignorance of the people. Glad to stumble on this, and your work seems perfect. The flow from the YouTube drove me here, and I can see that people on X or Twitter cannot see the live feed. I have double monitor, so I can have in.
Okay, do you have a question or a topic you want to debate, or what's up?
Okay, so let's see. What would be the binding, like you said about this web, thinking about this in the web way? What would be the proper solution for people to not divide themselves, but find themselves in common with those threads in this web, if you know what I mean?
Honestly, I'm not sure what you mean. I don't mean to be mean, but today's topic isn't really supposed to be tag, although I will go into that if that's the only thing that people want to talk about. But I'm not sure what you mean about common threads in that. King Elisar.
Hello?
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, I did have a question. I don't know if this will fit, but it's about Orthodox ecclesiology that I've just been looking into that I couldn't find an answer, and I figured you'd probably have a quick response for it. But first of all, I just wanted to say that I was looking forward to seeing people more educated than me attempt to speak about the Roman Catholic position, but just simply no one is willing to address the issues, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's an attempt. A lot of them, I know they do accept Vatican II, and I'm not sure if you're aware, but Pope Calixtus III, I believed, officially and infallibly taught that Islam is paganism. So it's a clear contradiction of the documents.
I agree.
Yeah, it's a clear contradiction of the document. I don't know if we're willing to accept that or whatever. So I will say I'm disappointed in the turnout of the quote whatever Roman Catholics who have come to debate. My question for you was just if a patriarch because they all have equal authority in the Orthodox system, right?
Mm-hmm.
If a patriarch were to teach heresy or apostatize, where's the onus for the expulsion out of the body of the church? Does it have to be taught by a certain number of patriarchs, or is that a thing to do with the pentarchy, or how does that function?
No, I think usually I think one thing that people misunderstand about Orthodoxy, especially when it comes to these kinds of issues, is that most of this stuff is local. So most things are decentralized in the Orthodox Church, and pretty much everything like that happens at a local synodal level as well. So the church is run by synods. So if a bishop or a priest or a person was excommunicated, most of the time that happens in a synod. If it's somebody more prominent like a patriarch, then that usually takes more time, and it takes more of a gathering of support from other bishops and other patriarchates to make that move. That's usually what you see in the first 1,000 years of the church, where in many cases we have many patriarchates and many bishops doing that very thing, going into schism. There's removal of communion. So the things that people point to in the modern Orthodox Church, like the schism between, or the emerging schism between
Russia and Ukraine,
is actually fairly common in the first 1,000 years of Christianity.
I see. It just takes longer.
Right.
Right, and do you think a good resource, like an historical example of that, would be the Oriental Orthodox? I'm not aware of their split, but eventually I assume that the Eastern Orthodox basically agreed that they are Miaphysites, I think, right? So that they aren't a part of your church.
Yeah, they're a little more complicated because there's a lot of history of like the Jacobites, for example. That was one guy later on basically suddenly ordaining like dozens and dozens of priests and bishops out of nowhere. And that's pretty late in the game after there had already been a severance at Ephesus and Chalcedon. So there's kind of like a long, protracted, difficult history with them. There was an attempt to reconcile at the Fifth Council with all of the Monophysites, which wasn't very successful, but it did solidify our dogma of inhypostatize and all of that. So I would say, it really begins at Ephesus, but then it continues into the Fifth Council and the Sixth Council as well, because the Sixth Council is really two wills and two energies is against the Monothelites, who are versions of Monophysites.
I see. So do you think, but if there were, this is a little bit more, I don't know if you would agree, but it's a little bit more innate. But if you have someone like a lunatic, like let's say the Patriarch of Constantinople prayed in a mosque, a la Francis, right. What would happen? You know what I mean?
Well, they're supposed to be canonically rejected. In other words, the ancient canons, for example, which are accepted at Trullo, and I think the Sixth Council, say that if you pray in a synagogue, you're excommunicated. So
ipso facto.
I think you're supposed to be that. I mean, I'm not positive that we would necessarily have the same like latae sententiae idea that later Latin canon law has.
Yeah, that the Catholic ideas.
I think
those are
what usually happens in the East is that although an individual in a situation might have the right to remove themselves from a bishop or a patriarch who openly started preaching heresy. For example, when Nestorius started teaching heresy, a lot of people left his church. They had the right to do that, but eventually, but even Cyril and people were considering Nestorius still a representative of the church until there was a synodal condemnation.
I see. Okay.
So basically, like with the situation with MP and EP, like we're at the stage of canonical discipline where there's a removal of communion. The next stage would be excommunication. So it would get really, really serious then. I'm not saying it's not serious now, but it's like it's not full severance, because in the Orthodox view, there's like stages to this. It's not like a black or white thing.
Convened
Correct.
To be okay. I see. All right, yeah, and I definitely would look. Do you think that the example of Nestorius is a good example? Because I looked in that a lot for Catholic ecclesiology in terms of the situation with the current popes. I won't get into it. But in terms of the Eastern Orthodox ecclesiology, do you think that would be a good example to follow, like how Nestorius was eventually condemned?
I think again, there's not a one size fits all answer, because, for example, if I'm under some bishop and I know directly that he's like continuing to preach heresy, then I would be justified from leaving, right?
I see.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody else in the church knows what's going on, or that they're deprived of the grace of the sacraments because they don't know yet. So I think there's a little more leeway. There's a little more leeway in the Orthodox view about understanding that it's not like a blackout, like everybody's grace is deprived.
Yeah.
It's more so public. When there's a public synodal rejection of the person is when we would say that at that point you have to avoid that person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's definitely something I want to look into, because it's one of the major things I don't understand about Eastern Orthodoxy, because I have been submerged so much in the Roman Catholic idea of having a pope that conveys the count. I don't know if someone rejected that earlier, but yeah, you were right in saying that it is the Pope who gives the Ecumenical Council the authority. So right. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, there's probably not an easy... John McGuckin's book is pretty good on Cyril and Nestorius and the whole history. Like
John, sorry, what was the last name?
McGuckin, St. Cyril of Alexandria, the Christological Controversy. The first 150 pages is the history of it, and then it goes into the Christology of both of them. And that really kind of gives us the whole picture and like where the two Monophysites and Orthodox parted ways. Nestorians and Orthodox parted ways. But it also will give insight into Miaphysite, Monophysite.
I appreciate the resource. I'll definitely look into it. I also wanted to say I'm looking forward to the I think you mentioned a series, much like, I don't know if I think you do know him, Sam Shamoun has a series of Trinity in the Old Testament.
Oh, I didn't know he did that, no.
Yeah, I really value that resource, especially in debating against Islam, because that's the whole basis of continuity between our religions, of the old, to divorce it.
Right.
Kind of, you can't really debate Islam anymore,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that, and also, too, appreciate that, like, that will also undercut the Jewish approach. Because I'm infallible, you're missing the whole point of the argument. So, Marco, do you want to come and make an argument? Or do you just want to spam the chat? I mean, it's ridiculous. Go ahead, Nick. It's like they don't understand what an internal critique is. Go ahead, Nick.
Oh, sorry. I have a question. It's mostly, I'm an Eastern Orthodox myself. The question is in regards of different autocephalous.
Hold on, different what? Different what?
Autocephalous churches,
okay.
Right? So when there are sometimes some awkward moments in history. Like, for example, there was a brief moment where Georgian autocephalous church was absorbed into Russian one. Then it reemerged again, and then first, if I believe correctly, Greeks and then the Russians reinstated, admitted the autocephaly. Is there any kind of dogma in regard to the period, like let's say in this weird in-between period, like what happens to, I guess, people who practice in the church? Like, are they deprived of grace? What happens in that moment,
Why would they be deprived of grace? I don't understand.
So essentially, what happens in between moments when, like, let's say a church is absorbed and then it regains autocephaly? Does it make sense? If not, then it might
absorbed by who?
I get it goes into some historic minutiae. I guess it's not relevant. Sorry.
It's okay. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Giancomo. This ought to be good. Unmute. Giancomo, do you want to unmute? We'll just keep playing the papal puppet mass. Giancomo, do you want to speak or not? You're on. Got to unmute. Giancomo, Roman Catholic dude. You got the Pope's flag in your bio. Do you want to talk or not? Okay, don't talk. Whatever. Marina. Why are the trad cats in the chat not calling in? Marina, you want to unmute and talk? Marina. All right, she dropped off. Joe. The topic is Catholicism, so that's our topic today.
Hey, can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I grew up Roman Catholic, and, I was told we're infallible, and just recently, in the past couple years, I've really been questioning everything, because I'm 23, so I've been paying a lot more attention the past 4 years. COVID's really woke me up. And then, as well, Nostra Aetate, just recently learned about all that, how we are saying that the Jews and the Muslims are worshiping the same God.
Yeah.
And so then, in addition to that, Vatican II is demasculinizing the church.
Yeah. Didn't Francis say that The church was too masculine?
Yeah, they're purposefully calling to demasculinize it. That's their own wordage.
Right.
Nuns without habits. And then we have 2,000 years of recognizing the Jews as pernicious in our Mass. And then they remove the words pernicious Jews.
Yeah, now you have to say that they're their elder brothers and that they're still part of the covenant.
Exactly. And we brought in Rabbi Abraham Herschel to help write Nostra Aetate. This is a Talmudic Jew who the Vatican II brought in to help guide the council.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now tell that to the Trad Cats, by the way. All right, so I appreciate that, but we're going to move on. Jay Goldman. Yeah, unmute. Jay, do you want to talk? Get unmute, man. Are you there?
Hello?
Yes, sir. What's up?
All right. How you doing, brother?
What's up?
All right, I just have a question. How do you explain the Lord allowing the Pope and the Catholic Church conquering America?
The what?
Conquering America.
All right, that guy's trolling. He has to be trolling. Atreyu.
Hey Jay, can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
So I'm looking into Orthodoxy right now, and I've just seen examples. Well, Catholics say that there's examples of the Pope like deposing patriarchs and bishops and outside of his jurisdiction. How would you explain that?
Well, the fact that he does that doesn't mean that he should have done that. If you look at the example of Saint Irenaeus, he rebukes Pope Victor for doing that, and Victor backs down.
Okay, thank you. And not to be hostile or anything like that, but I feel like if you allowed your opponents to speak, like and then attack their ideas, it'd be more credible.
Well, but you understand that the dude that came on a minute ago, for example, didn't want to talk about or address the actual issue. So you think that I'm talking over people when I'm pulling them back to the point that they're trying to deflect away from.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, I mean, the conversation was fine with that guy until he didn't want to stay on topic and wanted to avoid the very point I'm making. So people think I'm like, oh, you just talk over people. No, if I keep pulling people back, it's not just to talk over them. It's because they're not addressing or dealing with the challenge. And that's a trick that people do in debates where when they're pinned down or if there's something that's difficult, then what you do is you go on a red herring chase, you go off, you deflect. I mean, deflection is like classic debate technique. I just don't let people deflect, and then people say, you're talking over and being mean. Beacon.
Hello?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, I hope there's no bad blood from earlier today. I didn't mean to offend you or anything. So I had a quick question. Since I'm currently discerning, one of the most compelling pieces of evidence I find that I haven't seen you discuss extensively is that there are 67 or maybe it was 66 Lourdes miracles. And the reason, one of the Catholic arguments I hear is that the miracles are not just in isolation. There was an apparition that said these miracles were going to happen in regards to a matter of church doctrine, and then they were scientifically attested by modern doctors, like the one that was on the 60 Minutes interview. I watched that.
Okay.
How do you make sense of that personally?
Yeah, I don't accept any miracle claims as any proofs of anything in this regard, because would you say that Mary's supposed appearance at the Coptic church in Zaytun, Egypt, which was seen by giant crowds, does that prove Monophysitism?
I know that some Catholics accept it, but others don't, and it's not recognized by the Vatican, so I'm not sure if it's relevant to that line of argumentation.
Oh, so wait a minute. So now it's only what the Vatican recognizes?
I think so. That makes sense, because the Vatican has a team that authenticates those specific, like,
They got a team on it. Okay. So, but what I'm saying is that whether there's a Vatican team on it or not, like, if a Monophysite comes to you and says that Mary appeared at our church, so that proves our church, how are you going to adjudicate between these? It's not going to work by saying, oh, well, there's a team in Rome that's assigned to this. You understand, that's begging the question. The point is that miracles alone are not going to prove or disprove any of this.
Right, I agree. But the reason that I find the Lord's one specifically compelling is because it isn't just like where some people claim they saw Mary on the church. It's they have scientifically attested miracles by doctors where they say that.
Okay, and so scientists go to Jerusalem and they observe and do documentaries and tests on the Holy Fire. So you understand, now it's just rival science claims.
That's true. I think rival science claims should probably play a part into people's decisions.
Yeah, I think this is ridiculous. Like, how is this going to determine between what's the true and the false faith? This is silly.
I mean, Paul and the other Christians did signs and miracles.
Have you read Galatians? What does Galatians say?
To not ask for signs. The only one he'll be given.
What does Galatians 1? What does Galatians 1 say?
I don't know. I don't.
You're not familiar with Galatians 1? I'm not trying to be mean to you, but like, this is very important for this topic. What does Paul say about signs and wonders and apparitions?
The only verse I know regarding signs and wonders is the one where the only one he'll be given is the sign of Jonah.
Okay, well, see, you need to be way more familiar with your Bible than you do to trying to investigate doctors and scientists investigating lords, because Paul says in Galatians 1, not to believe any apparition or claimed miracle if it contradicts the dogmas that have been handed down by the apostles. So, again, this very point shows that Roman Catholics and people interested in Roman Catholicism are way off base. You've got people out here don't know what the triad means. They don't know what Galatians 1 says, but they're over here trying to do scientific. They got a Ghostbusters team in the Vatican that's on the case of lords. Come on. Joe. Tradcat in the chat. I don't know what your profile is. What is your profile name? And I'll bring you on. I'm happy to bring you on. Because if you're saying that the papacy apostatizing, becoming modernist does not prove orthodoxy, yeah, I'm pretty sure it does, because what else is the successor to the Orthodox Church in the first 1,000 years? Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, hi, Jay. Thanks for having me on. I might have like a quick question or two, but I also wanted to say coming into like the kind of like the Twitter drama that was happening like in the hour or two leading up to the space, like for any of like the Roman Catholics that are here, there's like this Pope Respecter account, and he's got this, he does like all these AI images of Pope Francis to like make him look badass.
Maze and trad when he's like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was like,
is he gonna do one of Francis? Is he gonna do an AI of Francis in the puppet mask here with here's a Pinocchio. Here's Pinocchio with Francis's puppet mask.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need AI to show that stuff, but they need AI to make him look cool.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I just wanted to point out how like slimy some of these guys are, because when I saw you were going to do the debate space, I'm like, okay, because I'm a catechumen in the Orthodox Church. I have been for like half a year now, largely thanks to your material. But I was like, okay, so I really want to see like some serious Roman Catholics debate Jay, because like I want to see if, because
you just saw Pine Sap in here.
Like propaganda.
Pine Sap was in here, and he's making dumb epistemology arguments and getting mad and calling me names once he couldn't answer it.
Yeah. And like this like Pope Respecter guy who I tagged, he like sets up his own space,
right?
And he says that, like, I'm challenging Jay now. And
yeah, he sets a space up at the exact same time, as the space I already set up, and then he can say, "Well, you didn't come to my space." I mean, this is just silly.
And he's already like posting about it and saying you're a coward and stuff. And I'm like, you know what? Like, because like I haven't been like a cradle Orthodox, I'm like reasonably open to changing my worldview if the right arguments are presented. But then I just see this like slimy, nasty behavior by these guys, and I'm like, you know what? I feel like way more confident now that like I'm making the right decisions. So
right.
I just want to say, like, to guys who think that this is the way to do it, it's not, because it turns people away. And so yeah, I just kind of wanted to say that.
Yeah,
like,
I appreciate that, Joe. Yeah, and many years to you. I hope you enjoy the process of catechumenate. Now, this guy's saying he's trying to get on here. Tradcat, I don't see your El Frico. Oh, here you go. Okay. Go ahead.
Finally.
What's up, man?
What's up? So I think that among a lot of American, whether it's Catholic or Orthodox, and especially the Protestants, there tends to be an intellectualization of things. And I often think this is because, I think that Christianity, I know you just went off on like Galatians 1 and, these supposed apparitions can't do this. Well, let's break, before I get into that, I wanted to say that, like, I think that in many parts of the world, these miraculous things like, oh, my grandma goes to drink coffee with the Virgin Mary. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying, we have to base our faith entirely on that, but we do have to believe in the miraculous.
I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah, of course, because, without the resurrection, we're nothing.
Right.
I definitely do think that certain miraculous things of the Church, of the Catholic Church, definitely do prove us. Ultimately.
Okay, hold on. So if it proves you, then you're an evidentialist.
I think, though the Bible tells us by their fruits you shall know.
Well, but Jesus, you remember the story of the guy who's in torments, and he says, let me have a drip of water to cool my tongue, and then he says, Lord, let me come back and let me tell my brothers lest they come to this place of torment. What does Jesus say to him?
I don't remember.
You don't remember the story?
Yeah.
So did Tradcats don't read the Bible? Is that, I'm not trying to be mean, but like this is a well-known story, right? He says that, yea, though one rise from the dead, they will not believe. They have Moses and the prophets. What does that mean?
I read the Bible, but at the same time,
what does that mean?
Repeat it again.
The man that's in torments says, Lord, let me go back, and if I rise from the dead, I can warn my brothers lest they come to this place of torment. Jesus says they have Moses and the prophets, and if they don't believe that, they won't believe even if one rise from the dead. What does that mean?
Well, that goes to show that just because certain miracles can take place, that doesn't mean that this is going to convince everybody. But I don't see how this supposedly debunks certain things.
But that's the point, is that miracles themselves can't be the deciding factor, because there's everybody out there in the world claiming miracles. Hindus claim miracles. Do miracles?
Yeah,
does that prove Hinduism?
Demons can influence things. In the Bible, you have.
So wait a minute. So how do we know when it's a demon versus a true miracle?
By their fruits. By their fruits.
Okay, I'll grant you that, but that means then that miracles themselves aren't a proof. They're an attestation to the true faith. They follow the true faith, so they're going to be there, but they can't be the thing that proves it.
Sure, but you would expect the true faith to have these things.
Agreed. That's exactly what I'm saying. Correct.
Yeah.
But they can't be themselves the proof, is the point.
I think that's a stronger proof. I think that certain things. I saw your debate with natural theology, and I think natural theology is so inherently true. And I think this point that you keep making,
it's inherently true. Okay, so now we're back to the epistemology issue. How do you know or prove that something is self-evident? Because that's what this classical foundationalist argument rests on.
I'm not going to pretend you like I'm super into philosophy.
Well, wait a minute. You said we know that natural theology is true. So how do you know it's true?
My bad, I was getting something.
That's fine.
Well, it's true because, and unless you're going to go into, like, how do we even know reality is real or whatever? Because, it's just like, we recognize them by their fruits.
So self-evident principles are true because we recognize them by their fruits?
Yeah. Literally.
What's the fruits? How do you determine the fruits of a self-evident maxim? So let me give you an example. The peripatetic axiom. What are the fruits of that?
This isn't even the main points I wanted to get into, but I was going to say...
Okay, yeah, but you said natural theology is obviously true.
Listen.
How is natural theology obviously true?
Listen. I'm going to recognize my limits in a certain thing, but back to what I said...
But all of what you're saying is built on this faulty foundation, though.
Anyways, what I was going to say is that...
right, but you don't want to talk about that, so blow past it, exactly. Mm-hmm. But anyways, I'm not going to care what you asked, or I don't concern myself with your arguments. Bruh. This is why they don't come on, guys. It's nothing to do with me being mean. Was I mean to that guy?
Yes.
Okay. And how was I mean to him?
Well, I don't think that you're mean. I don't want to talk about you. But I thought you were a little bit mean.
How was that? What did I do that was mean to him? At all?
You implied that was it him or the other guy? You implied that they don't read the Bible because they didn't know something?
Well, the issue of Galatians 1 is central to whether or not we should accept miracles and apparitions on face value.
Well, I do think the inferences you drew from Galatians 1 and the other texts from the Gospels, it doesn't really follow. Like, for example, you said...
Oh, so Galatians 1 is not about apparitions?
Well, he says, although I are an angel from heaven... we are an angel from heaven.
Okay, and so that doesn't apply to as a principle on recognizing and discerning?
I suppose you could definitely apply that to apparitions, but I think that there's other miracles that attest to the truth of Catholicism that do not, that you could not apply that to.
Could you understand that that's why I went to epistemology with the previous guy? Because every time you try to make this argument, you guys can't explain to me why this or that miracle or this or that vision or apparition, quote, proves Catholicism. Because it rests on a faulty epistemology that you guys just want to ignore and brush aside.
Okay, I would present it this way. I'm sure you're aware of, and you probably don't think much of it, and I'm not sure I do either, but I'm sure you're aware of C.S. Lewis and his trifecta, liar, lunatic, Lord thing.
Yeah, it's a terrible argument.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that you could apply a similar logic when we're talking about the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church makes very bold claims of herself, just as Jesus did. And Jesus vindicated the fact that if Jesus was not what he claimed to be... Okay,
so if I make really bold claims, does that make me also a contender for the true religion? Just having bold claims?
No, that alone, no. It takes
you
more
said
than
that Jesus is like the Catholic Church in making bold claims. Well, what's that supposed to prove?
Well, because of the fact that if his claims were false, then the Pharisees would have been correct.
Okay, have you never heard of why this is a bad argument, the Lord, liar, lunatic?
Can I present how I apply it to the church before you destroy me?
You can present it, but are you aware of why it might be a bad argument?
Go ahead.
Well, the way that the Gospels, for example, present Jesus, or the way that the New Testament presents him, in no way gives the possibility that he is a lunatic or a liar. In fact, Peter says, know of assurance this day that God raised him from the dead and has made him Lord. So to know with assurance, and to then read these texts that talk about pulling down the strongholds and destroying every other worldview, that doesn't to me leave this evidentialist notion that there's this possibility that, well, maybe he is a liar and a lunatic. It actually excludes that possibility.
Well, I agree. That's part of the argument, is the fact, we know that he must be Lord because we see from the scriptures that he is not a liar. He was a man of great upstanding moral character, and that he's not a lunatic.
The premise of this argument is that you either have to accept, in other words, it puts God in the dock and allows the unbeliever to be the judge of God. That's the problem with the argument.
Okay. Well, I think that, so I'll just go ahead and present why I think it applies to Catholicism with regard to particular miracles.
Okay, but wait a minute. If it's not a good argument, then presenting it is not going to do anything. I don't care if you present it, but what is it supposed to do if it's a bad argument?
Well, I don't think it is. I have to finish presenting it so that people can decide if
well, I just explained to you why it is a bad argument.
But I don't think that you represented it correctly. Can I my version of it, I guess, my spin on it, at least.
But it's based on an evidentialist approach to argumentation. It's still an evidentialist approach. And my critique, that has been the critique from the very beginning tonight, is that all of these evidentialist arguments fail because they're based on classical foundationalism. Do you get that point?
I understand that point. I understand that that's your perspective. I don't think that the scriptures have the same position as you because Jesus used his miracles to vindicate his ministry.
Yeah, but that doesn't conflict with my position, because using the miracles to vindicate does not themselves prove that the position is true or false. It's just an attestation or an evidence. I'm not against evidences.
But do you agree that if he, for example, if Jesus claimed to be God and he was not, he would be a blasphemer?
Yeah, that's the argument in John when he's arguing with the Pharisees.
Exactly, but he demonstrated with his works, and he said, for which of my works do you kill me? So he was saying he did good works, and that vindicated the fact that he was from God, and particularly that he cast out devils.
Yeah, but you're missing the point, though, that, like, let's say I prove the resurrection to an unbeliever. Does that prove Christianity?
Well, not the event in itself.
Right.
But the
so
context
evidentialism, this is why evidentialism doesn't work. That's the point. And the problem with evidentialism is the root epistemic issue.
Well, I would say you have to make an argument in order to make the resurrection meaningful to the person you're talking to.
What's wrong? Yeah, I agree with that. But there's places for when you make evidential arguments. That doesn't make evidentialism true. That's two different things. Evidences are necessary, not evidentialism. One's an epistemic position. The other is not equated to an epistemic position. I believe in evidences. I'm not an evidentialist. I believe in evidences in the proper place.
That's fair. I don't think I would identify myself as an evidentialist per se either, unless you think natural theology is evidentialism.
Absolutely, they're very closely related. So
okay, I think it's a little bit, but I guess you can just tell me. I suppose you a priori reject it, but because of this difference in like fundamental approach. But do you at least see where I'm going with the fact that because if the church is not the true church and the papacy is not infallible, why would God accompany this church with these miracles that can only be from God, such as exorcisms that Jesus he explains they can only come
in the book of Mark? Somebody casts out demons without being a part of Jesus's company. So there's nothing about exorcisms themselves that necessarily proves that you're part of the true church.
Right, but why would God accompany miracles to a church that makes that miracle in particular?
Well, I don't grant that you all have all of these miracles. First of all, I don't grant Fatima as a miracle or any of these ridiculous apparitions even as miracles.
Well, I'm restricting it to the exorcisms because I think those they can't be demonic.
But how would that prove that you have the true church? Do you if Mary appears at Zaytun, Egypt, to the Coptics, does that prove monophysitism?
No, I think apparitions are a weaker evidence.
Okay, so where do you get the criteria? The status of exorcisms are above the weaker level of apparitions. Like, where do you derive those?
Well, because an apparition, I'm not speaking of these apparitions in particular, but an apparition could theoretically be a demon, whereas a exorcism could not be, according to Scripture.
Okay, but none of this would still really work to prove natural theology. And by the way, exorcisms don't have anything to do with natural theology.
Well, I think that it does have to do. Obviously, the Council of Trent does teach that miracles can prove the existence of God and the one true faith. So there is
so really at root it's an issue of natural theology, right?
Right, but I'm saying that the fact that a miracle such as exorcism can prove, that's part of the Catholic position.
Yeah, but again, it's all going to be interpreted on the basis of the paradigm. So you're going to interpret what are supposedly Catholic miracles according to the Catholic paradigm to back up the Catholic paradigm. When I see those things, I don't see any proof of Catholicism because I have a different paradigm. So there's no way that these evidences what I believe is that we're all reading these events through rose-colored glasses. So it's just like if you try to show, for example, an atheist, if we try to convince him of the resurrection of Christ through, say, historical testimonies or something like that, like he's going to interpret those things through his atheist lens, and he's going to say something like, well, okay, maybe something weird happened, and a guy did one time, come back from the dead, and it was some sort of weird phenomenon, and we just haven't explained it yet, but one day science will figure out why and how that happens, and it'll be explained one day. So do you see that there's nothing about that necessitates that it's self-evident that Christianity is true, and you even said earlier that just proving the resurrection wouldn't necessarily prove Christianity. So the root issue here is the natural theology, and I want to know why natural theology is true, because if natural theology fails, Roman Catholicism fails.
Right. I mean, I'm not as philosophically knowledgeable as you, so I don't know if I want to go into a deep... I'm committed to that position, being a Catholic, but I came to my Catholic position a different way than you did, because I was...
Okay, fair enough.
So I came to this from and I didn't study the philosophy too deeply, but presuppositionalism made sense to me. I was a Calvinist. But as I was reading the Gospels, I saw that Jesus used his miracles to prove his ministry, and the Pharisees did interpret his miracles differently through their worldview, but that doesn't mean the miracles weren't sufficient proof. In fact, they were, and that's why they were so
Then why does he
commendable.
say to the guy in torment, even though you rise from the dead, they will not believe?
Because the issue isn't the sufficiency of the proof, it's the fact that the person is rejecting the testimony of Moses because of their sins.
No, the point of that is that even if one rises from the dead, they won't believe. It's a miracle.
Right,
A
you can't
resurrection.
compel. Yeah, you can't compel someone.
But by your argument, that's one of the strongest proofs would be a bodily resurrection. And Jesus says that no, if they don't believe the scriptures, they're not going to believe one that if one rises from the dead. So
Yeah,
so the miracles don't prove the faith.
My position is that it is proof, and that's why they're culpable for rejecting it, regardless of the miracle. That's why they're culpable.
Jesus says that even if one rises from the dead, they won't believe, because they already don't believe in the inspiration of the scriptures.
Yeah, but that's a condemn. Just like whenever the Pharisees ascribed Jesus' miracles to Satan, he then condemned them for that because of the fact that the miracles did prove that he was.
Yeah, but there's nothing about the arbitrarily chosen ones that you've picked out, like, oh well, an exorcism proves it, right? Because, by the way, if you look at Galatians 1, when Paul makes that limitation on what you're supposed to judge these events by, he's not pulling that out of nowhere. It's actually based on Deuteronomy 13 and Deuteronomy 18, which already gave you the criteria by which you judge all signs and wonders. So are you aware of what Deuteronomy 13 and 18 say about that?
Yeah, it talks about like prophets who say something will come to pass, and if it doesn't, then they're a false prophet. But if it does, and they lead you to worship other gods, then you're to stone them as well, or you're to execute them as well. And I would say,
let me give you another, and I'm glad you said this, because there's a very famous Coptic exorcist. Does that prove the Coptic Church? The Coptic exorcist on YouTube?
Well, I would say that it serves as evidence that God works in that church.
No, but wait a minute. Oh, so it's not a proof of the church, because now God works in churches outside of the Catholic Church. You said that exorcisms prove the Catholic Church.
Not by themselves. It's
so now it's not that exactly.
It's a combination of things, because
wait
the church.
a minute. So now you're moving the goalpost. I thought exorcisms.
No, I'm not.
But you are, because you said that exorcisms are better than apparitions, and those are the ones that we should look to. But when I give an example of Coptic exorcisms, no, that doesn't count.
Well, it doesn't have to prove it by it. I'm saying, for example,
but you moved
the
the
Coptic
goalpost.
Church misses that they don't have the qualifier of being a Catholic church. They're not universal.
Well, wait a minute. You don't even know what universal means, because according to the Church Fathers, universal means fullness of truth. It doesn't mean the papacy. It doesn't mean numbers. You understand that it doesn't mean numbers. In the 4th century, the, quote, Catholic Church was reduced to a small handful of bishops. So do you think it equates to numbers?
No, but I do think that Jesus commanded the Great Commission be fulfilled, and that
Well, but wait a minute. Every counter example you say doesn't count. So now numbers don't matter. So is it numbers or not that makes Catholicity?
Well, I don't think it's numbers. I think it's every tribe, tongue, nation, and people.
Well, I can agree to that, but I can agree that you can still be reduced to a small group, like in the Arian crisis in the 4th century. So did the church lose Catholicity in the 4th century?
It could be a small group, but not an ethnically, but not.
Where does the ethnic come into this?
Well,
maybe
I'm not too knowledgeable of Coptics, but it seems to me that they're very limited to a particular region.
Well, they have multiple ethnicities who profess monophysitism or whatever, who are of that quote communion.
Yeah, I guess I'm just saying, like, wouldn't it be confusing if God were to put these miracles in this church?
Wait a minute, isn't it? So why is it not confusing though for me to believe that the miracles are proving a group that has just now told me that Muslims and Christians worship the same God? How is that not confusing? So you're saying the miracle? I look to the miracles, not the documents and the dogmas.
No, I think that I suppose, yeah, it becomes an extended issue in terms of if Muslims and Christians worship the
Well,
same God.
do you believe that?
Do I believe? Yes, I do. In a sense, yes.
Oh, and what sense is that? Do you think Muslims think that?
No, Muslims would say I'm committing shirk.
Okay, so in what sense then does a person who denies multiple attributes of God and denies the deity of Christ in the triad worship the same God as a Christian?
Well, I mean, I understand that you.
No, I want to know. You tell me. Who cares what I think?
Well, I think that you would reject the fact that I'm saying that we both believe in one God, the God of Abraham. We believe in divine simplicity.
Oh, wait a minute. So do you know what the quantifier shift fallacy is?
It sounds as if you're saying that. Go ahead and tell me.
Do you know what it is?
I don't know it by that name.
That is when a person says, well, I believe in one God, you believe in one God, the Satanist believes in one God, therefore we all believe in the same God.
Right, yeah, no, I agree. But because
so if that's a fallacy, then how do you and the Muslim worship the same God? Because that was where you were going. Are you there? If you're there, we can't hear you. You can try to come back and come back in. I don't know. Jared.
Oh. Hey, Jack. How you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but these Catholic arguments are awful. I'm an Orthodox catechumen coming out of trad Catholicism.
Amen.
And it's wild. The amount of, I call it ostrich heading, when you just dig your head in the sand and overlook everything and just say, oh, well, the keys. It's just the true church.
Yeah, well, that's what happens is, anytime we really get into the issues, they throw their hands up and it's, apparitions, I just follow Fatima.
Is he not aware that also Jews and Muslims also practice their form of exorcisms? They have their own deliverance ministry, if you will. I come from a Jewish background as well, and I have Muslim friends, and they'll tell me, it's not the same God. We also have our own miracles. We also have our own.
That's an interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about Hasidic Jews do exorcisms, right?
Yeah, they do. There's a movie on it, a documentary. I forgot the name, but it's a legit thing, and they claim to have those kinds of miracles. So, like you said, miracles do not make a faith or a certain church legitimate. But that's, again, what they point to. And it's funny because all that scholasticism kind of goes out the window when it comes down to all of these, minute points and these miracles. I spoke to over 5 different, quote, trad priests who all told me different things. Some said Vatican II is what's it called? Not binding. It's not dogmatic. Some say it is. I spoke to a Uniate priest, a Romanian Catholic priest, and he told me that there is no one true church. Can you believe that? He said we're all just here worshiping the same God. There is no one true church. Let's all focus on just getting along. That's what I was told. So that really kind of vindicated orthodoxy for me. But I just had a couple questions on the Old Testament.
Okay.
Coming from the Jewish background that I kind of grew up in, I'm sort of confused on how rabbinic Judaism came into being. How could all of these religious Jews, these Pharisees, these people who study the text all kind of get it wrong? And then how did it kind of
we wouldn't say they all did. So, for example, if you go back to Jeremiah 8, when he starts talking about the lying pen of the scribe, we can tell that already in Jeremiah's day, probably related to the time in Babylon, there's a division, there's a fissure that's occurring already between certain scribes and probably what will become Pharisees. Ezra sets up the synagogue system. That's where that comes from. Right, he talks about in Jeremiah 8, the lying pen of the scribe already beginning to pervert the meaning of the text. Not the text itself, like Muslims say, but the meaning of the text. And then you'll notice that Jesus, in Matthew, I think 23, there's a lot of parallels with Jeremiah and his life and the things that he says that parallels the life of Christ. If you compare the two, they're really close. And one of those things is the diatribes against the scribes of their day. So Jeremiah's critiquing the scribes and the religious authorities of his day. Jesus does the exact same thing that Jeremiah does. So I think that's an indicator, a textual indicator, that's where we're beginning to see the rise of that tradition. And by Jesus' time, presumably, it's already kind of becoming codified. But keep in mind that thousands and thousands of Jews in the 1st and 2nd century are the foundation of the church. They are, so it's not like all the Jews went into rabbinic Judaism. Like, gigantic portions are the real, literal foundation stones of the church.
Right. So how did rabbinic and like Talmudic Judaism come into play? Like,
so this comes into, right, this is something that kind of manifests precisely when Judaism and Christianity officially part ways in the 1st and 2nd century. So if you read like the Boyarin book, or the I think it's the Boyarin book that deals with this departure in the 1st and 2nd century. He's got a whole chapter on this. What is the name of that book? It's at my other place. I don't have it with me. Let me pull it up. It's the one I cite in the Daniel Hakikachu debate.
Right.
But that's where you start to see the codification and the real solidifying of the different Talmuds, the Babylonian Talmud, the Jerusalem Talmud. This is where there's this idea, we don't even know if it's exactly the case, the Council of Jamnia, which supposedly kind of is a rabbinic synod to decide about a proto-Masoretic text. But a lot of this is just kind of like, we don't know exactly if that's the case, but it looks like that's when the two groups are parting ways.
Got you. Yeah, because my dad's Jewish, and he's very reluctant to. He's like, well, how did all of these, modern day Jews and these rabbis and these Pharisees kind of get it wrong? And that's why I'm trying to kind of find arguments.
Well, they did it right. Also, the Messianic Jew, what's his name? Buddy of mine from years ago. What's his name? Ken Ami. He has a book, Jesus as the Messiah: A Judaism versus Judaism Debate. And the book that I mentioned earlier is called Borderlines: The Partition of Judaism and Christianity by Daniel Boyarin. It's a good book on this.
Got you.
Yeah, great questions, man. Appreciate that. The edge of Marina, did you want to try again? We couldn't hear you before. Marina, you there? Marina Abramovich, are you there? That's just a joke. You have to turn your mic on. We can't hear you. Mario?
It's me, Mario. I'm the best. It's me, Mario.
Hi, Jay. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hi. I wanted to, regarding the remark on Trent Horn's post on Twitter that you said about the logical fallacy. I think that from his point of view, since it's
You talking about the quantifier shift?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's one, yeah.
Okay.
From his point of view, is he really committing the logical fallacy, since he's holding the position that, of the pure act and natural theology and all of that? So it could actually make sense that if Muslims or Zoroastrians or whoever reaches a God that is actually the same of the Aristotelian one.
No, but see, God is not the Aristotelian God. First of all, it's the triad.
Yeah, that's my point.
Right. But secondly, I don't even think it works. Even if a Muslim and a Trent, even if Abu Trent and Abu whoever Muhammad over here are coming to agree. If you read the Garaby paper on theistic fallacies, he makes multiple arguments where he points out that, like, to have the Christian deity, for example, requires a set of beliefs about that God, and if you remove any of that set, then it's not that reference anymore. This is why, for example, Basil, like when Basil is arguing against Eunomius, like, even though Eunomius says, "Well, I believe in Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, just like you." Well, does that mean that they mean the same God? No, Basil doesn't concede or think that Eunomius worships the same God as he does. So the systems are such that it's a holistic thing. You can't remove attributes or essential predicates and still have the same referent.
Okay.
And this is called in the paper, if you read the Garaby paper, I think his name is Daniel Garaby, Gereby, Theistic Fallacies. It's called the non-substitutivity of what is it? I just went blank.
But my point is that Trent's not sharing this view. So on his logic, he's not committing a fallacy because he's starting from a point of view where, I know that you disagree on that. You had a whole debate.
Wait, you're saying that? Wait, why is he not committing fallacy?
Because on his view, he doesn't agree with what you said about that attributes that you have a holistic system. I think in his
well, the fact that hold on, but the fact that he doesn't agree to that doesn't mean that he escapes the critique. That's just him being inconsistent.
I'm saying that he escapes the critique because he doesn't agree with the fact that you need the whole holistic view.
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying it's inconsistent. Okay. There's no such thing as like, I'm defending 30% of the Trinity. That doesn't exist.
No, but I think from his point of view, the Trinity is a revelation thing.
No, but that's why his natural theology fails, and that's why he argues that the Old Testament doesn't teach a Trinity. That's the point.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, so his whole project fails.
But okay, yeah. I mean,
all right, yeah. Well, you can keep defending that if you want to. Go for it, Mr. Kofkino. By the way, what I was trying to say was the non-substitutivity of identicals in epistemic context. That is the point in the Garraby paper, where there's a certain ambiguity to terms that don't tell us what the term is referring to unless we know the whole context. That's the point here. And if you read the Garraby paper, it's in there. Go ahead.
Hi there, Jay. Thanks for letting me come speak. I hope my mic's working well.
Sure.
So I am a Catholic, and I've listened to you speak quite a bit about natural theology. I listened to your debate with, I believe it was Trent Horn. It's been a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But I have some questions regarding this. So it seems to me, and I'm sure you understand this to a great extent, when it comes to natural theology, the idea is essentially that there is some things you can know about God apart from divine revelation.
Well, it actually goes further than that. If you look at the definition of John Paul II, his definition was, it's not just you could know some things. It's, let me see if I can find the definition here. So,
well, even if that's like a basic framework, would you disagree with that, or?
Well, let me see if I can find this definition. It's not long. It's let's see, where is it? It's just basically any reasoning about God apart from divine revelation, and it assumes that you can have this sort of self-evident approach to reasoning to God that doesn't require any revelation to ground it or to. It basically just falls back on self-evident maxims.
Okay, so right. Well, the way that or you critique often the application of this in the when speaking about the Catholic Church dogmatized that we worship the same God as the Muslims, and so I guess and this isn't me trying to get like a gotcha or anything like that. Honestly, I'm curious.
You can say whatever you want.
So, like, when it comes to Aristotle, for example, just an example. So, do you believe that Aristotle believed in God? Do you believe he worshipped our God, or is that just
right? So the Christian position should be the way that Basil in Hexameron 2 says that Aristotle was a fool because he worshipped the dyad, namely an eternal actualizer moving prima materia from all eternity. That's making the prima materia opposite God also eternal, and that would be a dyad. So how is that at all the same God as what we worship? So the point there is that there's no like scaled down lowest common denominator God. You got to have all of the attributes to be referring to the right God. And if I take away some of those key attributes, for example, many Muslims don't believe that God is omnipresent or present in the world or in time and space. So you understand that a Muslim immediately removes one of the crucial attributes of God.
Sure.
So if that's the case, then the referent is not the same.
Well, okay, so the way that I would critique a little bit what you're saying, and forgive me if I'm mischaracterizing you in some way, but it seems like any sort of basically one would have to have a full understanding of God and all of his attributes in every way to truly
you have to have the ones that are delineated in divine revelation, or for example in the church's teaching on the Trinity and the Incarnation. So it's not like I have to know every exhaustive aspect of God, but I have to know the ones that the church has laid down.
And okay, so as a Catholic, right, I attend the Latin Mass, and even in the Novus Ordo, which I sometimes attend, the Filioque is, we profess the Filioque, and so that would be something. Would that be something in your eyes that you see as a sort of as one of these big attributes that we're missing? Because we profess the Filioque, you deny the Filioque, you believe in the monarchy of the Father.
It would be one. I think there's other things that Roman Catholics hold in relation to the Trinity. They'll also cancel it out beyond just the triad. For example, created grace is another one of these elements that cuts off the direct knowledge of God. The other thing, too, is a point that I think Losky makes, which is that the whole project of natural theology, for example, assumes that you can have access to attributes of a simple essence that don't come to you into the mode of the triad. And the problem is that if you go to the Cappadocians and to the triadology of Constantinople I, which is the ecumenically dogmatized teaching of the Trinity, supposedly for the West too, they actually argue as if the attributes and the energies come in the mode of triad. So in other words, there is no attribute that comes to us that's not triadic. So if you're going to talk about God's omniscience or his omnipotence or his eternality or whatever, those are energies that come in the mode of the persons that have them. There's no such thing as deriving a bunch of attributes from an absolutely simple essence. So the project from the outset is thus anti-Trinitarian. And if you read the Garrity paper, he actually argues, why would I accept a Thomistic view and not a perennialist view? Because a perennialist makes the exact same arguments as a Thomist in terms of their lowest common denominator attributes approach. And he uses, for example, the embarrassing figure of in our church, who is still a Thomist, Swinburne. Swinburne has this list of what he thinks are the lowest common denominator attributes to pick out, quote, classical theism. And the point is that there's nothing about this list that would prevent you from becoming a perennialist.
Again, I'm not too familiar with perennialism, but I just...
I'm not trying to be mean. So you're not familiar with that?
I'm not at all. Not at all.
Okay. So you should read this paper. I'm not trying to cut you off. I'll let you say whatever you want to say. But the reason this is really important is because I think this argument about perennialism shows that the lowest common denominator approach is very dangerous, because it can easily lead a person to the what's the name of the perennialist guy in here? So the paper cites Hick, I think is his name. Anyway, but if you read the article, you'll see the perennialist guy that's mentioned, and he actually makes this point to Swinburne, the Thomist, and he said, basically saying, there's nothing about this that prevents me from taking the natural theology LCD, lowest common denominator attributes, and concluding perennialism. That's like Schuon, Guénon, all those goobers. There's not. So in other words, the whole project is anti-Christian, you see, and that's what underlies the Nostra Aetate Lumen Gentium 16 approach to why we can pray in the mosque with Muslims.
Yeah, so I mean, I could say some things to that. I'm not sure how helpful that would be, but it seems to me that the Catholic Church sees itself as being grounded in revelation in saying these things.
But the fact that it claims that doesn't that just means that it has conflicting claims. That doesn't mean that it's correct, because it claims something else somewhere else. Let me give you an example of that real quick. For example, Trent was saying, or somebody in the thread, it wasn't Trent, somebody said something like, here's a quote from the Catechism which says that there's traces of the Trinity in the Old Testament. No, I'm aware that Roman Catholics believe that there's these traces, quote unquote, of the Trinity in the Old Testament, which, by the way, I think there's actually weak language. It's not traces, it's like explicit. But even if I granted that it was traces, Like, all that tells me is that that's inconsistent with what is presented in Vatican II's Lumen Gentium 16 and Nostra Aetate about the common ground with Muslims.
Well, I would say when it comes to Trent's debates, and I've heard him say it a few times, and I found it rather disappointing, is the idea that Abraham was unaware of the Trinity in some way, things like that. I find those sorts of comments disappointing.
Well, but you understand that, if I recall, in Summa Contra Gentiles, Aquinas actually makes that line of argumentation, that the Old Testament reveals God's sort of Unitarian existence, and then with Christ and the apostles, we get this new revelation of the Trinity.
I think I'd say that I think that Trent is being a little loose with his language. I would say that I don't think that the patriarchs necessarily had a full understanding of the interior life of the Trinity, but I do believe, like, it's very clear in the text when in Genesis, when the three angels are appearing to Abraham. That's obviously at the very least a type and sign, but the language is used literally that is God.
And you understand too, there's also like dozens and dozens of other theophanies in the Old Testament too. Okay.
Yep. I've watched your debates with Shabir Ali and the other Muslim fellow.
Okay, well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to start a whole new series now. I'm going to go through every theophany and Trinity, deity of Christ passage in the Old Testament. So that's going to be the series.
It's a great idea. In the pre-1955 liturgy for Easter, the Easter Vigil, which I attend yearly, they also have there's some texts that the whole idea is that you're tracing Christ's presence or the promise of Christ throughout the Old Testament, and there's simply more readings there. So there's some interesting ones that I had not found before. There was, for instance, one in Baruch, which I hadn't been brought to my attention yet.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of these. In fact, when I did a talk on this 3 or 4 years ago, and it was about a 3-hour talk. And then since that time, I've reread the Genesis, Judges. Actually, I've reread most of the New Testament since then, maybe a few times over. And there was all these passages in Isaiah I totally missed. There was passages in I missed the passage in Judges, I think Judges 6, where it says Yahweh turned his face to Gideon. I totally missed that. So I mean, I miss these things. It's everywhere.
So when you were speaking with Pine Sap earlier, the ecclesiastical discussion came up where you were speaking about. So there's he was referencing some particular scholar with regards to this list of dogma. So I was the whole thing that was screaming to me at that time is that, I mean, theoretically speaking, as a way of knowing, the Pope or a council could declare those things. Do you disagree with that assumption? Or
okay, so wait a minute. But this is what I find to be really, and I'm not trying to be mean to you, but really absurd is the idea that the Roman Church is the oracle from which we look to find out what the magisterial dogmatic teachings are. We've never been given a list of this. Oh, but one day we'll get that list. So that to me is just preposterous, given the fact that the purpose of the existence of the papacy was to provide that, and now we're actually saying that it hasn't provided that. It's going to maybe provide that one day in the future. You don't think that's kind of just ridiculous? And by the way,
I understand.
By the way, you're not ever going to get that, right? We know that, like, Francis is not going to give you the infallible list of the infallible dogmas.
Oh, so okay, so the way that I see it, though, is it seems as though the magisterium is constantly doing, and not exactly that, but is giving us the knowledge which we need regarding any particular topic that is of controversy or.
But you see that even though, for example, they might put out a new document or an encyclical, addressing this or that issue, like that itself isn't doing me much, because I then, like every other Roman Catholic does, has to go through that document and try to figure out, well, wait, is this sentence actually part of the universal ordinary magisterium that was reflected in all the other previous documents? Is this a new private opinion of the Pope, or is this now part of the ordinary teaching, which I do have to accept but might be fallible? You see that you're not in any better position if you just say, even if you say that, well, there's a new document that addresses the controversies. Like, it's still, the issue is still there. Like, and that's why every Roman Catholic comes up with a different list of what the things I have to believe are.
I guess I understand your critique in that sense. I just, this is sort of my subjective feeling on the subject, so
that's fine.
This isn't but it seems to me like one can, if one is being charitable, one can get at least a reasonable understanding of the faith. It seems to me like a lot of
I will grant. So I agree that Rome has laid out those basic criteria, right? Like it has said, it's got to. So there's extraordinary magisterium, which is absolutely binding. That's directly pronounced for the church on faith and morals by the chair Peter. There's the universal ordinary teaching, which is also under the charism and reflects anything that the church has always taught at all times. And then there's the ordinary teaching, which might err, but must, as I understand, be submitted to with docility, even if you disagree. But again, the issue is not, does Rome give you a criteria? The point is that you've got 3 vague criteria. The reason I'm saying vague is not that the criteria themselves are not precise, but there are 3 vague criteria for a giant mass of documents, which I'm bound by all the papal teachings. That means that if I buy the $400 or $500 set of the papal teachings, which is an actual set, that it may be $1,000 now. I don't know what it is, but if I buy that set, that's all the papal encyclicals for the last several hundred years. I'm bound by all of those documents. I'm bound by everything that's in Denzinger. I'm bound by all the things that are in the Catechism that line up with that as well. And I'm also bound by the ecumenical councils and their teachings insofar as they're approved by the Pope. So that's a giant stack of documents. So I have 3 criteria that I'm then supposed to understand and dig through these documents to find and put in the right bin. To me, it's just a sort of outlandish to think that you're in any better position than a Protestant. In fact, a Protestant has actually less documents to comb through. He only has the Bible, but you have the Bible and all of these other tens of thousands of papal documents that you're bound by, that you have to hope that you're putting into the right bins. Now, how is that any better than a Protestant position when you could very easily be putting them in the wrong bins? And isn't this exactly exemplified by the fact that all the different Roman Catholics come up with different lists of what the things they're bound by? And you say, well, we could just go to, being charitable, we could go to like the basic ideas in the Catechism or the basic ideas of what Rome could thought. Well, wait a minute, what's basic? Because hold on, so here's the point. So like Vatican II and Nostra Aetate, I mean, a giant portion of the Roman Catholic world doesn't want to believe that. So you see how this is not getting you in any better position.
Sure. So what I mean to say, though, what I meant to say with like the charitable reading, what I mean to say is that.
Jamie? Hold on one second. Hey, Jamie, could you make me a double shot? Thank you very much.
Drinking the coffee, I'm getting it.
Absolutely. Okay.
Well,
yeah, I'll be off. What time is your show?
I'm setting up in here.
I can get off here. What time is your show?
It's okay.
What time is your show?
7:30.
Yeah, I'll be off. Go ahead.
So it seems to me like the advantage that we have over the Protestant would be the Protestant has this one sole infallible rule of faith, whereas we have we believe that the Church is capable of so whatever. That's not to say that every single person's going to believe whatever proclamation. Like this is the same issue. I don't see how you. I guess if I could make it, I'm not trying to like obfuscate or run away from what you're saying. It just seems in my mind, as I'm running it through my mind, Orthodox teaching. Obviously, you believe in the ecumenical councils and that sort of thing. How could there's
well, what I'm saying is that what I'm saying is that it's like it's usually viewed as a kill shot that. We've got the magisterium. The magisterium is lacking in these other churches. That shows that we're the true church. And I'm just simply pointing out that how does the saying that you have the magisterium and that you have these 3 criteria put you in any better position when you have actually more documents to try to comb through to figure out what the quote faith is? And I can further exemplify this problem by the total confusion of the last 70 years in the Roman Catholic world about what Vatican II means.
Well, I mean, wouldn't you at least concede that there's at least a more present? I wouldn't say that it's necessarily some sort of kill shot, but I think that there's definitely at least some sort of present authority to look to. It seems that that's lacking in Orthodoxy, and I think that's sort of built into the system. Obviously,
Orthodoxy's authorities are at the local level, and I think that's what most Roman Catholics find very hard to comprehend because they think of authority as this totally centralized thing that's way off in Rome. And really, and I'm not being Go ahead.
No, it's a frustrating thing when you hear people say, well, like, this patriarch did X, this patriarch did Y. Well, obviously it's a completely different understanding.
Okay, but how is that any different than the situation of a Roman Catholic with, again, the situation of Vatican II and its documents?
I'm confused as to what the thing is.
So because we have a different system, right? So like, it's not a big deal to us. I mean, it sucks, but it's not a big deal if the Patriarch Constantinople's a heretic. I mean, if Francis becomes a heretic, it's a big deal.
Yeah. No, I understand. It's just so I think that a lot of those criticisms are. I think there's a lot of people that fundamentally they don't know. For example, like, this is something I've encountered in a lot of like schizo-trad circles. Is that people don't know that the church teaches natural theology, for example, and they sort of take and run and say, oh, well, Francis is a heretic, or, the post-Vatican II, obviously you think they're a heretic because you reject natural theology, but the church does not. And so they think that there's this sort of rupture that exists between let me ask it this way. Do you think that when Francis and Pope Benedict go and pray in the mosque towards Mecca, is that a manifestation of the ideas that are in Nostra Aetate and Lumen Gentium 16? I think to a certain understanding, possibly. It depends on what you mean by that. I don't think
certain understanding. What do you think their understanding is?
I don't think that they are going in there saying like, "Oh, let me do Salah and prostrate before."
You don't believe that's classic. Well, hold on, but classic Catholic moral theology says that the faith is also expressed by your actions, not just by your verbal confessions. So
I understand.
So wait a minute. So, but isn't praying in a mosque towards Mecca an expression of acceptance and indifferentism?
I don't think that in itself it is. I think that combined with other things it could be. But
okay. What about combined with Nostra Aetate saying that Muslims share with us the faith of Abraham?
I don't think that's not exactly what it says, but they profess they profess the faith of Abraham, or they claim to profess the faith of Abraham.
Wait a minute. The church esteems the Muslims. They adore the one God living and subsisting in himself, merciful and all-powerful, the creator of heaven and earth, who has spoken to man. They take pains to submit wholeheartedly to his decrees, just as Abraham.
Correct.
Oh, you believe that? You believe that?
I believe that.
Okay. So you believe that Muslims share in the faith of Abraham. You just said they don't.
According to a certain sense, I would say that they are attempting to worship the same God. They are doing so in error.
Oh. Well, how does Paul say that you have the faith of Abraham?
Well, I mean, in Acts 17, when
no,
in
Galatians. Acts 17 says that it's an unknown God. I'm talking about Galatians. Who has the faith of Abraham in Galatians?
Well, yeah, but just the.
It's not. Every Christian should be able to answer this. Who has the faith of Abraham in Galatians?
Well, I just want to push back a little bit, but before we go into that, what Paul says to the Athenians is what you worship in error, I proclaim to you.
And what was it identified as in the passage? The what God?
The unknown God.
The unknown. Okay, so but you're telling me they know him.
According to a certain sense.
But he's the unknown God.
Well, so the Athenians, they knew that there was this God that existed in an unknown sense, and so they named him the unknown God because they didn't.
And Paul's point is that you don't know him. Just like the point here is that Muslims don't know that God because the only way to be in the faith of Abraham is to be in Christ. That's what Galatians says. You don't know what Galatians says about the faith of Abraham? You already admitted this point when you said that the Old Testament taught the triad. That means correct. Abraham was worshiping that God. That means correct. That the descendants of Abraham are not Jews and they're not the Muslims.
Correct.
Oh, well then you don't believe Nostra Aetate and Lumen Gentium 16.
According to a certain sense, I would say they do. And I think that...
Is adoration part of worship?
Yes.
Okay, so does a theistic Satanist also worship the same God?
I guess it would depend because with the...
No, the answer is no. So this is... I mean, does a Mormon worship the same God if he just uses the same words?
Well, okay, so hold on. I want to address the Satanist point before I don't want to be misunderstood there. If a Satanist is saying, well, like, Satan exists and God exists, like, if there's a necessity there, well, then really they are, in a sense...
A theistic Satanist believes that the one true God is Satan. So what? Yeah, exactly. So what are the lowest common denominator attributes that set it off? And the point is that there's not a lowest common denominator list of attributes, because to remove one essential attribute means it's a different God. Hence why. So does Basil? Let me ask you this way: does Basil think that Eunomius worships the same God as him? Does the church think that the Arians worship the same God?
Well, are they using that language when they're speaking to him? Do they say you do not worship God at all? Like, is that the sort of thing that they say?
Well, yeah. I mean, Eunomius is an extreme anti-Trinitarian. So why would
I understand.
Right? So why would Basil think that they're worshiping the same deity?
Well, I was just asking, did he use that language?
How does Jesus use? What language does Jesus use with the Pharisees who called upon God the Father too? What does he say?
Well,
yeah.
It depends on.
No, what does he? No, what does he say to the? What does he say to the Pharisees in his day, who called upon God the Father, the God of Abraham? What does he say about?
He said different things to different people.
No, you know what I'm saying. Stop! Don't talk around it. What does he say to the Pharisees? The Pharisees are they're the actual respected authorities, according to Matthew 23, that sit in the seat of Moses, right?
Well, I mean, he refers to them as the children of Satan, that they're not of the Father, and that sort of thing.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah.
So
exactly.
No. I'm
So that's why this doesn't work. True. That's why you got it's either one or the other. It can't be, oh well, we all worship the same God, but we also don't.
I'm not. So okay. So I wanted to press this a little earlier, and I'm not like we can get back to whatever you'd like to. But when Paul speaks of the Athenians, does he say what you don't worship at all I proclaim to you, or does he say? He says what you worship.
He literally says the God that you don't know. That's the point.
Well, no,
I mean,
but
well, let's take up another passage that deals with Acts 17. That's Romans 1.
Well, I hate to be nitpicky over the words. I'm not trying to be like a jerk in that sense. It's just it seems to me that he very clearly says that they are worshiping. They're just doing so in error, and that's what I would say.
No, he's saying that first of all, he goes on to say that you don't even know this God because you've tried to image his ousia or his nature, which he says can't be done. Okay, so
he says this God does not live in temples.
Right. So in other words, their idolatrous image was not accepted by God.
Yeah, I don't dispute that.
Oh, but you just said that they were worshiping the true God.
No, I think that in a certain sense they were. Yes, but that doesn't mean that their worship is actual.
Worship. Okay. So that's the point, though, is that I can, as a pagan or an atheist or whoever, I can have an idea of what the Trinity is or this kind of stuff. And that's the point that I'm getting at, is that that's very different, having an abstracted idea, from knowing that God. And that's why Romans 1, I think, is really important to refuting this Thomist approach and this natural theology approach. Because if you look at Romans 1, when Paul says that all men deep down know God, does he say anything about syllogisms or rationation process in that letter?
Well, obviously not.
What does he say is the source of their knowing God?
Well, it's according to divine revelation.
No, Romans 1.
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Okay, I'm not trying to put you in a spot to be rude to you, but Romans 1 is the passage where where Paul is talking about that all men are without excuse because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God. Professing to be wise, they became fools. And so this is parallel to the discussion in Acts 17 about what's going on with these people. And so he actually says that they had turned his eternal power and Godhead into an idolatrous thing, the very thing that the Athenians are doing in Acts 17. And what he says is that God gave them up to live according to the passions and so forth. But the point about this whole passage is that it's not a rational thing. It's an inner heart thing. That's why he later says that the word is near you, even in your heart, in Acts 17. That's the nous. The Roman Catholic Church doesn't teach anything about having a heart or a nous. Are you aware of that?
I think that there's different language that's used there, but I do believe that there is a certain sense of a similar idea.
No, you don't have the nous doctrine at all. In fact, the Roman Catholic Church has a dichotomy view that the intellect is the highest aspect of the soul in man. Post Augustine into Aquinas, that's your church's teaching. There is absolutely no nous teaching. It's not the mind is not the nous is not the mind or the intellect. It's the heart. That's why Paul says they didn't know God and their hearts were darkened. Heart is a doctrine that comes from Hebrew revelation. It's a Hebrew teaching. The heart.
As a Catholic, I would just understand this, and this is my reading of what certain Thomistics have said, but it's the idea that that God gives us the grace which initially moves us towards faith.
But that's not addressing this. That has nothing to do with this point. That's nothing to do with. Because I'm telling you that the Orthodox Church teaches a different doctrine, which is what Paul teaches in line with Hebrew teaching about the heart or the nous, and the Roman Catholic Church doesn't have that.
I'm just thinking there's a similar idea.
No, it's not. It's not similar. It's not the intellect. We reject the Augustinian idea that the intellect is the highest faculty in man, and that his soul is essentially identical to the intellect.
And
I'm telling you that if you read Romans 1, that's what he's talking about, not a rational process of syllogisms like Aristotle. So if Romans 1 was about natural theology, and that's how Aquinas exegetes it, for example, we would see him talking about they reasoned incorrectly. They didn't use the right syllogisms. He doesn't say that. He says that in their hearts they knew it, and their hearts were darkened. Nothing about syllogisms, nothing about any of that. So what I'm saying is that Romans 1 is the companion to Acts 17, and it's not Thomism, and it's not Roman Catholicism.
So okay, my question would be then how do you believe that they are distinct, right? In terms of I'm sorry, I spoke a little uncarefully there. I'm trying to think through what I want to say before I say.
Well, I'm not trying to be rude to you. You can. We had a great conversation. I appreciate your civil way of discussing. I am gonna have to go pretty soon because I think Jamie has a show. She's gonna have to come in here, but
that's fine.
Yeah, just pop back in the next time and we'll chat again. Appreciate you being civil. Any last Roman Catholics that want to pop on, raise your hand. This is only for Catholic stuff. If you're not Roman Catholic, we're not doing 1,000 FAQs on Orthodoxy. So anybody? Bobby, C, Shane. Okay, Shane is a Catholic. So what's up, Shane?
Jay, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, during that conversation, the last one, you mentioned something about the Orthodox understanding of authority. I was just wondering if you could give me a brief snapshot of that. I'm not too familiar with, the Orthodox understanding of authority.
Yeah, so for us, authority is local. It's the bishop and it's the synod. And that's actually most of how the history of the church has been governed. It's not usually, even the Roman Catholic Church is not on a day-to-day basis governed by Rome, right?
Right.
So it's synodal. That's what we mean.
Okay. I had a dialogue with Luigi. I'm sure you're familiar with him.
Yeah.
And we were kind of discussing this, and he brought up how basically the final court of appeal, the final, authority appeal would be the council, the ecumenical council.
Yeah, that would be the highest authority for us, yeah. Or a pan-Orthodox synod.
Right. Okay. So if that's the case, what happens when that council is not in unison?
Well, if you mean, are there false councils? I mean, most of the time synods come to some resolution and they're either accepted or rejected.
Yeah, I was referring to because he was, and I don't remember what council it was, but he was referring to at some point in history where you had the 4 patriarchates of the East going one way, and then the Patriarch of Rome going another on an issue, and so I was just curious if the understanding is that the council is the final court of appeal, and that unison amongst the councils, is what constitutes that, the full expression of that authority. I was just curious to hear, what would happen when that council is not in full agreement.
I sucked coffee down my throat. Hold on.
No worries.
Give me a second. Roman Catholics put a voodoo spell on me. Hold on, let me go. I'm gonna go to the ad. I'll be right back. Just one sec.
I want to show off something that we're all proud of. I got a browser here. This is Jay Dyer's much vaunted, much sought after Philosophy 101. Now, he just got this page up. We are just testing it out. You guys are some of the first people in the world to see it. I want to say, for my part, it's not Philosophy 101. I think this is a mistitling. I really think of it as like Philosophy Unleashed, because a Philosophy 101 course, they give you kind of some useless information that you can't make sense of. Jay actually lays out over 12 weeks, dozens and dozens of hours put into just the presentation of this, let alone the hundreds and thousands of hours of research that it takes to have a coherent evolution and history of the origins of philosophy, the uses of philosophy, the different ways to look at it over time, and how that has been brought about to what we have today, which is almost an absence of philosophy on the objective logic and reason side, and an overabundance of woke philosophy that is irrational and is made up day by day as people are like, I think we should bring racism back, and then here's a justification, and then it gets wokeified and spread out, and then all of a sudden you have a bunch of communist, socialist ideas where you become the property in action. You need to be able to stand your own ground. It helps to have a foundation in philosophy because it's a method to find truth. When you get down to it, philosophy is there because you love truth enough to go and learn how to find it because it's valuable. So if you're interested in things like that, there is the landing page. We'll link it up in the notes. It is a longer one, so we'll get a shorter URL for this. I'm sure Jay has a link on his page. I just wanted to show it off. Now you know it exists. You can go look for it and see why this is not your father's philosophy, right? So well done. I'm proud of everyone who helped to produce and edit the course. And of course, Jay did a flawless job in presenting the course over those 12 weeks. And he's a juggernaut. He's another guy, just like John Bush, in action all the time, doing something productive, like very little wasted time in his week. Those 168 hours of being harnessed very well. I want to show off something that we're all proud of. I got a browser here. This is Jay Dyer's much vaunted, much sought after Philosophy 101. Now, he just got this page up. We are just testing it out. You guys are some of the first people in the world to see it. I want to say, for my part, it's not Philosophy 101. I think this is a mistitling. I really think.
I'm going to put you on something crazy real quick. Most of these Zoomer gym bros are consuming macro-guzzling synthetic dyes and synthetic sweeteners on the daily. They don't even know it. Goofy AF. There's nothing great about that. Do not listen any further unless you are an alpha or sigma male. This is important and there could be consequences. There's a new certified sigma male pre-workout powder for sigmas only. It is guaranteed to empower you to dominate your co-workers, fire your boss, aggressively gamble, or invade a small village. Chad Mode stands out from the crowd by excluding artificial flavors, preservatives, sweeteners, and dyes. We've even avoided so-called natural flavors, which are actually not natural at all, ensuring a clean and effective formula. Experience the pure goodness of Chad Mode, colored with organic blue spirulina extract, organic lemon, cherry, and organic maple crystals. Forget synthetic caffeine made in a sketchy Chinese lab. Embrace the natural power of organic green coffee bean extract, which will get your mind going and pump you up to the max. Chad Mode is made in America with all clean ingredients, the first clean pre-workout of its kind. Why are these people adding synthetic sweeteners to every single pre-workout when there are many studied downsides to consuming nasty fake sucralose? Each dose of Chad Mode contains the kick of a cup and a half of coffee, delivering a surge of energy alongside essential vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and herbal extracts. Chad Mode will allow you to fire your boss and dominate anyone who opposes you. Chad Mode will make you more dominant in your daily life, so proceed with caution. It's as simple as mixing 1 or 2 scoops of our fine
connecting Nostratate and the Catechism paragraph like 841. Church's relationship with the Muslim.
Yeah, hold on one second. Let me pull up the Catholic Catechism. Hold on.
Yeah, go for it.
You said paragraph what? 8 what?
841.
Alright, I don't know why this is taking forever.
And while you pull that up, I guess, do Catholics just deny that that religions can be demonic? Do they think that every religion is somehow like of God a little bit?
Yeah, I think the idea of natural theology, or if you look at Francis's Fratelli Tutti, if you go back to that document, Fratelli Tutti, for example, gives at the bottom prayers for non-denominational, I think, and then prayers for Unitarians. So the idea is that kind of like Francis is in the middle of a concentric circle ring situation, where at the furthest ring would be like pagans and Hindus, and then the next ring would be like Muslims and Jews, and the next ring would be Protestants, and then the next ring would be Anglicans, and the next ring closer to the circle, to the center, would be Orthodox, and then you got Francis in the middle. So it's like a concentric, circles idea here. And I think that they that's what they think of all the world religions. And so really this makes Francis basically like he's like the holder of the keys of the world religions ultimately. By the way, what can you so none of these online versions have the numbers. Do you know what section it is you're talking about?
Ooh, section. It says the church and non-Christians, the church's relationship with the Muslims.
All right, hold on.
Section 2. It's part 1, section 2, chapter 3, article 9.
Still can't find it. Let's see. Let me try it this way.
If you want, I can just comment it on the chat or something.
You could just go ahead and read it. Go ahead and read the section you're talking about.
Sure, yeah. So it says, the church's relationship with the Muslims. The plan of salvation also includes those who acknowledge the Creator, in the first place amongst whom are the Muslims. These profess to hold the faith of Abraham, and together with us, they adore the one merciful God, mankind's judge on the last day.
Yeah, that's very similar to Lumen Gentium 16.
I see. What do they mean by the plan of salvation? Is that just like to turn to the Catholic faith, or are they claiming?
Well, it's ambiguous, right? Because it could mean that Muslims can be saved as Muslims.
Right. Yeah. That's definitely what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like when they're talking about the Jews too.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why even supposedly trad Pope Benedict in his book One Religion, Many Covenants basically says that Jews have an absolutely valid reading of the Old Testament that denies Christ and the Trinity. So, yeah, I mean, One Religion, Many Covenants also suggests that.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I recommend people reading. In fact, there was a book that came out. There's a book called Salvations of the Jews, and it was presented by Ignatius Press, the Catholic publisher. And it was written by, I forget the person's name, but in that book they're commenting on and trying to make sense of the older ecumenist document that came out talking about Jews as the elder brothers, and that Catholics shouldn't proselytize them. They have a valid way. It was a huge scandal like 10, 15 years ago in the Catholic Church. Jimmy Akin was up in arms about it. Let me find that book, because people should read this too, because it's hard to find that. Here it is. Roy Scheumann. This is the book. If you get this book, it actually goes into detail trying to make sense of these documents and the Vatican documents about the Jews. And this is written by a person who's like Hebrew Catholic Society or Association, something like that. Anyway, this is the book you want, because in that book it will admit a lot of these things, and it will pull up and reference that I don't have it with me here at this house. It's at the other house. But it will reference that Vatican document on the Jews that was pretty scandalous a few years ago. Catholic something, Jose. Got to unmute. Catholicos Jose, do you want to talk or not? Or Joe, excuse me. Joe. Thought it said Jose. Are you there? Did you turn your mic on? We can't hear you. Come out and come back in, Joe, and we'll come back to you. C.
Hey, Jay, I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about Islam, but I first want to say that Islam and Roman Catholicism are pretty much self-refuting systems, and you just have to read what they have to say.
Mm-hmm.
And Roman Catholicism, they put out like all these decrees and everything like that. You just read them,
Yeah.
and it's self-refuting.
Right.
Same with Islam, and with Islam, it's not we just go off the Quran alone. There are Quran-only Muslims, but you have to also read the tafsirs and the hadiths and like the legislation like that they put out and everything. So just with a couple of things with Islam too is they, and I've heard you speak about it a little bit, they're kind of occasionalist. So they deny free will. They believe in predestination. And it's multiple places in the Quran too, but in the hadith, it's like really alarming. And I just want to say that they try to like affirm that there's free will so that you have to like submit to Allah.
Yeah.
But then in their system, they just outright deny free will.
Right.
And they try to take on a compatibilist like free will, but I don't believe that's true free will.
Well, I don't think that again, like you said, like the system doesn't even allow for that, right? I mean, Allah is said to be a good deceiver, right?
Exactly.
So if Allah's a good deceiver, how can we trust, Allah's revelations?
Yeah, exactly. And like you can read Surah 32, and then it's Ayah 13. It says, "If we had so willed, we could have certainly have brought every soul as true guidance. But the word from me will come true. I will fill hell with jinns and men altogether." And
Hold on. Surah 32, what?
13.
Okay, let me pull it up. Okay, go ahead.
And yeah, I just want to say with the translations, it's like they purposely kind of word it in a way in English to deceive the actual like real meaning in the Arabic. But it says, "If we had so willed, we could have certainly brought every soul its true guidance."
Mm-hmm.
So why would Allah not do that? And there's so many places in the Quran where it says Allah guides who He wills and misguides whom He wills.
Right.
So their God's a deceiver. How can you trust any of that? And then, I think it's funny, like, this is just kind of a side note, but if you go to Surah 69, Ayah 32, it talks about inserting someone on a chain, and you go to the tafsirs.
Wait, it talks about what?
It talks about inserting a chain.
Okay, so I've got it pulled up. It says, "Then tie them up with chains 70 arms long."
Yeah, so
Okay.
if you go to the tafsirs, there's the tafsir of Ibn Abbas, and that's supposedly the cousin of the Prophet. And it says, "Insert the chain in his anus and extract it from his mouth. And what remains of it, turn it around his neck." And then you can go to another tafsir of Al-Jalalain, and he's also talks about inserting, like,
Right.
a chain.
So basically, like weird, like torture stuff.
Yeah, he takes pleasure in torturing human beings. And there's also another, I forget where else, but it's like he will burn the flesh off of us for not believing in him, and then replace our flesh so that it can be burnt off again, and that's going to be going on for eternity.
Yeah, Allah's psycho, exactly.
Yeah. So I don't understand why anyone believe in that. And plus, too, with like the whole free will stuff, if you actually read the hadiths about it in Sahih Muslim, it's like you can't know if you are predestined for hell or not. So I don't even see why anybody would want to believe this system.
Oh yeah, so basically, if you live your life as a good Muslim, you can still be damned to hell, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now we had a debate with a dude, and this came up, and he tried to say that this wasn't in the text, and it was. So
yeah, it's all over it. It's in, and it's not just in the Quran. It's tafsirs and hadith. It's like everywhere.
My
So
definition is
yeah, let me play this clip where the guy's doing.
Where does it say that?
Now, notice by the way the similarities too between the Islamic approach and the Roman Catholic approach.
Exactly.
It's a famous surah. You're not aware of that?
It's not a surah, it's an ayah. But which ayah are you speaking about?
So it doesn't say that.
I'm asking you I'm asking you what's the proof.
I mean, we can look it up. I don't have the Quran or any of the hadiths in front of me.
Well, I'll need a reference from you.
Yeah, he's trying to play dumb.
So and by the way, Jub, thanks to Jub, he actually put up on the screen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 references directly from the Quran.
I don't want to play. You want to play the game of because I don't have the internet in front of me, and you say that you just admitted that it exists, right?
No,
you said you said it's not in the Quran, right?
I never said it's not in the Quran. Not once.
You just did. That. You said it's not a surah.
Yeah, there's a difference between a verse and a chapter. There's no chapter which is called God is the best of deceivers. I know that for sure. However, is there a verse that says that? Then I'll need you to bring a reference.
Okay, so but you're not familiar with this. There's papers written on this, right? People debating what it means.
So whether I'm familiar or not with it is not relevant to me asking for a source.
Do you have the internet in front of you? I don't have it in front of me at this moment.
I think it's
what I'm trying to tell you.
Just out of curiosity, Jay.
I think it's Quran.
Okay, so you're going to play games here, and he's not going to look it up. He's going to be he's dishonest. So we know you're not a prophet because you're being dishonest.
Well, I never once claimed prophethood, did I?
Right, but you're dishonest with your sources, which is what you guys are always doing. So, but I'm curious about, what is this debate supposed to prove anyway? So,
Sorry,
what
Jay, I just want to point something out.
Right,
if somebody is dishonest, Jay, if somebody is dishonest, then they are claiming something which is not true. What claim did I make that is not true exactly?
You know good and well that there's a hotly debated verse that says that Allah is the best of deceivers. And you don't want to look it up. I'm not where I can look it up at the moment.
Okay, no problem. Somebody is sending the verse. Somebody is pinging me right now, so I'm going to see what they said. Surah Al Imran, verse 54. Okay, let me see it. Sorry, but verse 3, chapter 54 says, وَمَكَرُوا وَمَكَرَ اللَّهُ. Disbelievers made a plan against Jesus, but Allah also planned, and Allah is the best of planners. Is this the verse you are referring to?
There's a whole debate over this where it says that he's the best of deceivers, not planners. Didn't he deceive everybody about what happened on the cross?
Did he deceive everybody about what happened on the cross?
Yeah, you know your tradition is teaching about how they switched Jesus, or Allah switches Jesus out on the cross, right?
Okay, so
is that a deception?
Okay, so what I'm
is
claiming.
That a deception?
Oh, just 1 second, wait. So you said I will answer you, but first of all, we need to recognize that God showing an image of Jesus on the cross is not a lie, because a lie is claiming something which is contrary to reality.
So now he redefined what a lie is, and lying is only speaking something verbally false. So if you steal somebody's money and you just don't ever say what it is, right? You're not a thief, you're not a liar because you didn't verbally say it.
Now, there we go. So this is why it's a waste of time to ever debate with you guys. You guys are such deceivers. It's so ridiculous. So now you've redefined what a deception and a lie is. So
my definition is being consistent from the start.
No, you've redefined it now that's not a lie, right? So Allah can deceive people with what happened on the cross, but it's not a lie because of your definition, right?
No, so I'll explain. My definition has been consistent from the beginning, but doing something which might make it appear something which is contrary to reality is not the same as directly saying something which is contrary to reality, which is the definition of a lie.
No, it's not. That's your definition of a lie. So I can deceive as long as I don't use verbal words that are a contradiction. I never lie. So if I can lie. So if I steal people's money and I don't say what I did, I'm not lying. It's not a contradiction because I'm not verbally saying it. This is so retarded.
Nope. Double speak.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's how that religion works. But you'll notice Roman Catholics have done a lot of the same stuff, especially if you read Alphonsus Liguori and his list of ways that you can lie. Did you know he has a whole list of how you can lie in a righteous way?
I didn't know that, but I'm definitely going to check that out.
Yeah, appreciate that. Guys, I want to remind you that you can head on over to chalk.com. Here's the rest of this video, and then Geob has the Quran citations there. For these passages, which sometimes is translated as Allah is the best of plotters, right? So that's why I just went to the actual example of Allah tricking everybody about Jesus and switching him out. And that's not actually lying though, because Allah didn't verbally say anything. This is how spacious and the sophistry that these people engage in. Luigi, did you want to say anything about Roman Catholicism? I noticed you popped in here. Anybody else? It's a sort of last call here. If any other Roman Catholics want to pop on. Mark Carney, $1. Will you debate other Sedas? No, not interested. Guy, $5. I already did a whole 3-hour response to the whole Seda thing, so that's my take. Guy, $5 says these Roman Catholics are embarrassing themselves and their Pope. Lopan, $10. Keep up this great work. You brought me out of the Protestant libertarian world and became Orthodox a few years ago. I can't thank you enough. Hey, thank you, Lopan. Luigi, did you want to say anything?
I don't know I just hopped in here, so I don't know what specifically you were talking about with Roman Catholicism.
I mean, we just kind of went through a lot of epistemic stuff. We went through a lot of natural theology. We spent a lot of time on whether Muslims and Christians worship the same God because of Vatican II. So you don't have to if you're busy. You don't have to comment.
No. I was just one thing I found curious today, especially on Twitter, was like the Latins have been yapping quite a bit lately, but as soon as you offer to debate them, they don't want to come on. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean Wagner himself was whining, and as soon as I offered it, he said, "No, I'm not interested." So
I mean, yeah, and then Militant Thomas called us Hindu energy worshippers today. So it's like, and then they wonder why you block them.
Yeah, I mean, they act like this, they get blocked, and they whine about being blocked. I mean, it's like, it's never ending. Jay DiBiase, what's up, man?
Hello?
Yeah.
Hi. So I've been aware of you for some time, and when I found out you were holding the space, I wanted to get in and listen to what was going on. I just wanted to make more of a statement that I feel like Catholicism is under attack more than ever these days. It's not just from you; it's from many other people.
Now, is it under attack from the Vatican? Maybe.
No, not at all.
Oh, really?
And in fact, yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of Protestants, especially on Twitter, are very, very vitriolic when it comes to its attacks on Roman Catholicism and the Church, especially Mary. And I understand that you may have a difference in belief in that, but I did learn last night
hold on.
Orthodoxy. No, don't cut me off, because you cut a lot of people off, man, and I really getting my blood boiling a little bit. Okay, I understand that we may have some differences.
Hold on. We can't have a conversation.
Okay, sure, go.
Now, I mean, you're saying that it's not a problem in Rome, but when Pope Francis and Pope Benedict go and pray in mosques towards Mecca, you don't think that's a denial of Catholicism?
I think it's a binding of union that he's trying to find commonality in differences.
Okay,
and
you understand
that's
that
very, very important.
The first 1,000 years of Christianity calls this action an excommunicatable offense.
In whose eyes? On whose authority
The
are you making
canons.
that claim?
Oh, so wait a minute. So now we don't know whether or not we can pray with Muslims towards Mecca? Nobody can know that?
I don't understand the question.
So you're saying that in whose eyes, which would presume that an individual Christian can't even know whether we can do this or not until the Pope tells us? Is that what you're saying?
No, never said that in any
So-
way whatsoever.
Well, you just said in whose eyes is this right or wrong? So that's
I said I said on whose authority is this right or wrong?
oh, so I need
It seems like a
authority.
lot
So
of
I need
people-
authority to know whether I can pray in a mosque towards Mecca.
No, I don't think anybody's praying toward Mecca.
It's on the screen right here for you.
Oh.
You didn't know that Pope Benedict and Pope Francis did this?
I mean, not to Mecca.
No, they pray
No.
towards Mecca. You didn't know that Muslims pray towards Mecca?
Not exactly. I'm not very versed on Muslim ideology, but
Okay.
that's not
Well,
exactly what I'm
did the Roman Catholic Church call crusades? The Pope call crusades against Muslims ever?
I don't know.
You don't know.
I'm not going to lie. I'm not very theologically scholarly.
So why are you here to debate if you don't know anything?
I'm here to debate you, and I'm not necessarily even here to debate. I'm just calling out a statement, dude, because there's a man by
Well,
the
that's
name
not how
of
this-
Tristan Haggard. Well, hold on a minute.
That's
There's
not how
a man
this
by the
works.
name of
Calling out
Tristan Haggard.
statements.
Sir,
What does that even mean? Calling out
sir,
statements?
You're not letting me answer.
Because you're acting silly. Like you're not making a coherent
really
argument.
not, man. I'm really not. I think you're really, really hostile toward Catholics. I think there are a lot of people that are hostile toward Catholics.
Yeah. Do you understand why we might?
not all be
Can you understand why we might be hostile?
Not really.
Really?
No.
So your Pope is up here after 1,000 years ago calling crusades against Muslims. Now he's telling us that we should be praying in mosques towards Mecca.
I think he's praying for unity, my friend. I don't know if you know.
It doesn't.
unity
So
means.
so this tells me that you don't even understand basic Christianity. If you think that you can go in a mosque and pray towards Mecca.
I absolutely do understand basic Christianity.
No, you
And
don't,
how
because
dare
you
let
you
that
think you
claim
can
against
you think
anyone
you can
like
go in a mosque and pray towards Mecca. You're not a Christian.
Absolutely not. But you keep pivoting to this Mecca thing when I'm trying to bring up
Because
a
it
point
shows the apostasy that you're denying.
You're pivoting away from my. You're pivoting, man. You're really good at pivoting. You and that Tristan Haggard guy, who I've seen on YouTube a lot, are really, really good at pivoting and.
You're just
ransacking
really bad at
people.
debating. You're emotional and you don't even know what you're talking about.
Maybe I'm a little emotional, sure, and I know a lot about what I'm talking about, man.
Wait a minute. You just said you don't know a lot about these topics, and now you're saying you know a lot about it.
No,
Which one is
they're
it?
not theologically scholared.
Oh, so then
That's
you
what I said.
theologically scholared.
Yeah.
That's not
I'm
a word.
Theologically, I don't have a theology degree. Not an expert in any of this.
Right, you don't know anything.
Claim to be that. What?
This is ridiculous. You're not scholared. Matt?
Nothing, Dyer. The victim playing on the other side is crazy right now, dog.
They're all victims until they get on here and they
It's
act
not
like
even-
these
I've
lunatics.
been listening for probably a couple hours now, bro, and it's like, bro, the victimhood or just the analysis of each religion, bro. If anybody's a victim, it's us. Like,
Absolutely.
What the fuck? Like what? Like people over here trying to be the victim because you called somebody a wine mom. Okay, when you and you preface all the attacks and everything, and everybody knows all the attacks that you get and all these other, not to couple you with all these other individuals or apologetic, individuals. But bro, like, come on, now, let's be real. Like let's just be real for a second, guys. That's it.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment, and I totally agree. It's kind of ridiculous. And again, remember, guys, these are the Crusaders, and the slightest bit of pushback, and they're crying and losing it. You want to come back, man? If you come back, just calm down, and let's have a conversation. And don't tell me that you want to debate, but you don't know theology. Because that's what this debate topic is. If that's the case, then why are you trying to debate?
Sorry, I didn't realize you let me back in. Listen, I at the beginning of this statement I was trying to make, all I was going to come to the point to, and I'll get to it quickly just in case you cut me off or, shut me down.
Well, I'm
or
not scared of
whatever.
anything that you have to say. You're not hurting me.
I'm not accusing you of being scared, sir, but you did just remove me.
Because you don't know what you're talking about. And it's all wrong-headed. Why are you trying to debate when you have no knowledge of the topic?
Sir, there's plenty of knowledge of the topic. In fact, I don't even know.
You literally just said you don't know the topics, and now you want to debate because you have knowledge of the topic. Like you can't even within 2 sentences you contradict.
Oh my Lord, my Lord in heaven, please help me.
Oh.
Listen to me.
Okay.
I'm just trying to find out what your problem is with Catholicism.
I mean, I gave you a glaring problem right there with Francis praying in mosque towards Mecca.
Is your problem with the Pope, or is it just other stuff?
I gave you a
genuinely
glaring
curious.
example.
That's okay. I need more than that because the church has been around for over 2,000 years, and I think there's a
Okay,
lot
so
of
tell me
similarities
why
between
why can we
the
call it
people.
Why can Urban call a crusade 1,000 years ago against Islam, but now we can go pray in mosque towards Mecca?
Bro, I'm not.
You're an
I'm not very
emotional
much
wreck.
for
That's
Mecca
why.
thing.
That you're
I
an
do know
emotional
that.
wreck. That's right. Exactly.
I,
Luke. So a lot of the people are like, well, why don't you debate the solid Roman Catholics? There aren't any. There aren't solid Roman Catholics. Okay, Tim is the only solid Roman Catholic, but Tim doesn't do online debates. He only does in-person debates, which is fine with me. I don't knock him for that. The in-person debates are actually a much better format, but I mean, who even is this? Who are the great Roman Catholics that can come have the? By the way, the guy that was in here earlier that we had the long chat with, he actually was pretty good. Like, that was a great civil conversation. You notice that he and I had a fine conversation for probably 40 minutes. Did we have any anger issues? Was he mad? Did he call names? No, we had a perfectly civil 40-minute conversation. Just so you see that this is not me being mean to these people. It's absolutely possible that we can have these conversations. The Pine Suck guy was fine until he wouldn't answer the question and started saying shit to me. I didn't say anything mean to him. I just kept calling him back to the point that I'm making. And then he starts saying, "You're an angry little man." Didn't say anything mean to him. So you see how these people act as victims. And then at the slightest bit of pushback and questioning, they melt. What's up, Luke? Go ahead.
I don't think it's fair that you get all the fun, debating the Catholics. Breaking news from Arabic sources in Gaza, the Catholics are doing wartime, conflict zone, human trafficking of Gaza children. It's just breaking today.
Well, I'm not surprised. Can you give me a link to that?
Yeah, it's on my timeline. You guys can see. Also, the Catholic Church in Australia covered up a child rape for gay marriage. The biggest school district in Australia, Edmund Rice, had a choice. Do they support gay marriage or their own student, Kyron Reid, who was raped by a queer hero who won the inaugural national care
We're on
award
YouTube, though,
at
so you got
Festival.
we're on YouTube, bro. You got to be a little more toned down there. Daniel, what's up? But yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, Mother Teresa's own order was outed for being a human TRAFFICKING thing. Daniel, do you want to say something? Go ahead. Go ahead, Daniel. All right, well, we can't hear you if you're going to try to say something. So, I don't know why Shia Muslims are... It's not a Shia Muslim debate, man. What do you want to say? What's up?
Hello?
What's up?
Hey, how's it going? So you were discussing some verses from the Quran. I was wondering if you'd like to engage in that.
I mean, the topic is not Islam today; it's Catholicism. But I mean, what's your issue?
Yeah, right. So you're referring to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala being the best of deceivers, and I don't see a contradiction with that because the context of the verses when
did Allah so he's a deceiver?
No, you're referring. Well, the word itself, like we're discussing the context of it.
Okay, regardless of the words in those verses, did he trick everybody about Jesus?
Right. So that's a separate issue.
It's not separate. It's another example of him being a deceiver.
Right. If I could just make my point, and then you can respond.
It's not Muslim Day. Daniel. What's up, Daniel? Are you there? Dude, what's up, man? What are you doing? Are you just breathing? Yeah, it's not Muslim Day, dude. I don't know what your deal is. No, it's not. It came up because that guy brought it up. It's Roman Catholic Day. It's not Muslim Day. There's a million Muslim days.
I mean, just on that point too, chapter 6, verse 112, Allah creates demons for the very purpose of deceiving the prophets. So another example of that.
Let me pull that up. It's Surah what?
Chapter 6, verse 112.
Okay, let's pull that up. Allah set forth the example of a society that was safe and at ease, receiving provision and abundance for all directions. Its people met Allah's favors with ingratitude. Allah made them taste the clutches of fear for their misdeeds. You said 112? No,
Chapter 6.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I hit the wrong button. I hit 16, not 6. Excuse me. So we have made for every prophet enemies, devils, humans, and jinn, whispering to one another with elegant words of deception. So Allah created the demons for deception. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, for the purpose of deception, yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, thank you. Roman Catholic dude just popped away. Did you want to come on? Today is for Roman Catholics. So one guy came on and asked the Muslim question. That's fine. Earlier, but we're not talking Quran debates typically. But I don't see anybody else coming. Let's see. We got super chat from Captain Slowboy, $5. Isn't Elohim plural? Yes. In the Old Testament, what about the verses? Of course, the Old Testament believers knew about the triad. Yeah, exactly. I mean, Elohim is not like the linchpin only thing, but I mean, it does point in that direction. Luke, $5. Check out a pastor named Marcus Rogers. He has a Exposing Ancient Demons at Council of Nicaea. Oh no, it sounds like a nightmare. He has 700,000 subs. Well, that speaks to the idiocy that's out there. Storm the Cat, $10. I saw a picture of Francis. He was wearing a black suit with his hand in his coat, the way that Masons do. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he was a Mason, but sometimes people just are like pulling something out of their coat. We don't know if was a picture snapped, when he was in the middle of grabbing his, I don't know what he'd be grabbing out of his inner pocket. I don't even want to know, but I wouldn't read too much into that. But I wouldn't be surprised. Drix, $3. How does the Orthodox Church? How do I check out Orthodox Church that speaks Spanish? I don't know. I mean, there might be some Orthodox. I know there's a recently established Orthodox Church in Mexico, but if you're talking about Spain, I'm not sure. What should I do if there's not a Spanish Orthodox nearby? Usually what everybody does, like Tristan, for example, he's down in Ecuador. They have a Serbian priest come to them like once every few months, who's like, I don't know, 6 or 8 hours away. So probably the best bet would be that you could have a liturgy, because I think where Tristan's set up, like they have a liturgy there now, which is pretty sweet. So the priest will,
I know the priests in our area too are learning how to do the Spanish liturgy. So
oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's this guy sounds like he's talking about Spain though, not like America, but I'm not sure. Yeah. Anonymous, $25. Jay, I love you. Your current approach makes it easier for the other side to hate you. Well, I mean, I'm not sure about that because, the current approach is to consistently give these people the opportunity to come debate. And then what happens is that they act out, and they act so ridiculous, and then I block them because that's how they act. And then they're mad that they got blocked. And then they pretend like I don't want to debate them, interact with them. But you heard the guy like 40 minutes ago, or the guy that we had the 40-minute conversation with. I mean, he was perfectly civil. We had no problems. And we had a great back and forth. But a lot of these young guys, like they can't control their emotions and they get really angry. And they're also very feminine. So So I just disagree that I'm making it easy for them to hate me. Catho $1. If your patriarchs are not infallible, then can they go into error like a Jehovah's Witness? Yeah, any individual patriarch or bishop can go into error, sure. By the way, your popes have gone into error and are in error. So look at Honorius, look at Vigilius, look at the post-Vatican II teachings right here. I mean, are you going to tell me that Francis is not in error? Tonical, $3. Did the magicians of Egypt turn the wood into real snakes? Well, I mean, Jude seems to speak as if they did mimic the first two miracles, Janus and Jambres. So I would say, yeah. If a Roman Catholic saw that, would that be proof to become an Egyptian pagan? Yeah, I mean, that's the point, right? And even that other guy even admitted that, like, it's not just miracles, but then he kept qualifying it. Well, it's not apparitions, it's exorcisms. Well, but it's not Coptic exorcisms, because that's not enough. So he kept moving the goalposts. BMX $10. Thank you so much. Retaking something? What's up, dude? Retaking and unmute.
Hey, Jay. I just want to say I shared a dialogue with the Will guy who was on earlier in the stream with the British accent. And when you bring up any of these topics regarding Nostra Aetate or the Abrahamic Faith Center, the first thing they want to do is say, let me give you a bunch of historical stuff. Let me just talk about stuff from the 12th century, just ignoring all of the contradictions internal. It's just very weird to me that the Catholic will never want to talk about the system itself, but just let me tell you about the history of something that's completely irrelevant to it.
That is true. Yeah, I don't know why we can't go to these documents, dissect the documents. I mean, we've got Francis's gigantic blasphemy center here, where there's basically no Christian imagery, but it supposedly is the shared faith between Muslims, Christians, and Jews. And I don't hear any of them actually addressing this thing. Every time I've brought this up, they will not talk about it.
Yeah. Or you mentioned theophanies, and they go, well, we can just kind of think about, maybe it was some sort of image or some sort of projection, and it's just like, where's the Christianity here? It's just it's pretty insane to me. And Will is actually he is a knowledgeable Catholic scholar, but who cares about the history if you just ignore blatant contradictions and the sophistry they have to?
Yeah, that's the thing with right. That's the thing with people that are like into Catholic history. Oh, well, he doesn't want to go to epistemology and the dogma. Okay, but Roman Catholicism is not a religion of history. I mean, I know they have an important thing to do with history, and they have Roman Catholic historians, but at the end of the day, Roman Catholicism is defined by its dogmas, not its historians.
Right, and I got into a conversation with a couple of the Catholic accounts, and basically they say, well, you just know Catholicism's true because you can just kind of look up the history and it's kind of self-evident. And it's
exactly.
You think that's how worldviews work? Like, that's not how worldviews
That's why
work.
we constantly critique the evidentialism, the classical foundationalism, and the epistemology, which is exactly what we did the entire night tonight. Exactly.
Yeah. Pretending that, there's just all these self-evident things. And if you just read the text plainly, and it's like, do you understand that things are read within a paradigm and worldview? They have no knowledge of these things.
Yeah, you understand that that's exactly what James White says. When you talk to James White, why I'm supposed to be a James White Protestant, he says, because the text clearly says what it means, and it clearly means what it says.
Yeah, so I was just going to add that one thing. Thanks for having me on. But it's just like they love to talk about history a lot. And it's like that has nothing to do with contradictions in a system.
Yeah, the argument is that there's contradictions in the system and the dogma. You can bring forth all the historical, points that you want. It's not really going to matter for what we're talking about. Elijah, what's up, man? Go ahead, man. Elijah, unmute.
Oh, how's it going?
Yo.
So I have two things. So how much error can a saint commit before, you wouldn't really consider him a saint?
I don't think there's any self-evident thing that's like the list of that. Usually it's a question of whether that person is received at a local level. So contrary to the way Roman Catholics think, sainthood is not this thing that the Ghostbusters team over in Rome decides. It's the thing that's decided at a local level. So in Orthodoxy, sainthood is still local. So there is no like special list of things that's going to tell you that.
Okay, well, I was going to say, because it's like you guys consider Augustine a saint, but you and so many other Orthodox really bash him on so many things like original sin and all that stuff. So why would you guys consider him like a saint?
Right, because sainthood is not a situation that revolves around whether you got everything, single theological issue correct. It revolves around whether you were humble about it. And if you read on the Trinity, Augustine says that he submits this book to the decision of the universal church to judge whether or not the things in it are acceptable. And so what did Constantinople I do when it dogmatized the Trinity? Do you know?
No.
Okay, so you're not even familiar with your own church's official dogmatized doctrine of the Trinity, which is all Cappadocian and Eastern Church Father theology. It's not Augustinian.
Thank you. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Father Deacon, did you want to say something? Father Deacon, nice. You want to talk? Get on mute.
Sorry, it does it every time. Like when you bring me on, it goes like silent for like 10 seconds. I was gonna say, you have to think about it. What is sainthood? It's primarily being holy and working for the kingdom of God and acquiring the virtues. So the reason why St. Augustine's a saint is not because of propositions and facts, but because of he was a holy man. And you have to understand that first and foremost.
And compared to Origen, right? So there's a great contrast between why, for example, Origen would be considered a heretic and Augustine as a saint. First of all, Origen's errors are much more severe. They're more extreme in terms of their Neoplatonism. But Origen did not accept the correction of the church and did not submit his teachings to the church. Origen persisted in his errors and is for that reason called a heretic.
And also just the irony as a Roman Catholic to say that when they just canonized those Coptic martyrs.
And don't they also accept Nestorius now?
Yeah, they venerate. I mean, Eastern Catholics normatively venerate St. Gregory Palamas, who called the Latins of the devil. John Paul II had an icon of him in his personal sanctuary.
Yeah,
had an icon of St. Gregory Palamas right next to Thomas Aquinas. So it's.
Let's think about this. Suppose there's a demon or the devil, and he writes a theological treatise, and he's a demon or a devil. He's obviously intellectually proficient and gets all the theology correct. You make him a saint? Is it because, the facts were correct? Or is it because they're holy that we make people saints?
Yeah, exactly. Good point. Fijigalo mode. I don't know what that means.
Hello, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey, first of all, I want to start by saying I really respect your work. I do have I'm not sure, is this just strictly Catholics or can I talk about Protestants too?
I mean, no, so I'm not trying to be rude. The topic is Catholicism. So what, I'm not, I'm sorry. It's okay. It's okay. It's just not, it's not Muslims and it's not Protestant stuff today. It's not atheism or any of that. Daniel, what's up? You want to try again? Daniel? I just don't think your mic works, dude. Sorry. Door day?
Hello, Jay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Eastern Orthodox
Orthodox from Serbia. I just wanted to say, I was listening about Mary aborigines, like that they seen Mary, and in Croatia, like 40 years ago, there was like appearance of Mary in Croatia, and because Croatian are Catholics, they say, okay, that show that we Catholics are true.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened, they go on that site and they start digging up, and then they seen that there were graves of bodies of Orthodox people that Catholics killed during Second World War. And in our Orthodox Church, we consider them the saints. So even thought there was appearance of Mary, actually it was proving Orthodox and not Catholic Church. So even for appearances, you need good hermeneutics. You cannot just say it was appearance. Okay, but what it means, what its point? It is not about just it appears. Okay,
right.
Then what is hermeneutics like? You just don't. Even Bible is some kind of revelation, highest form of revelation in Orthodoxy. But still, you need hermeneutics from the church. You still need church to say what it means.
Exactly. I think that's a great point with the earlier arguments made in terms of apparitions and exorcisms. That's exactly the point. Now, here's this article, again, Mainstream News. This is from 2014. This is when Pope Benedict went and prayed in the Blue Mosque towards Mecca with the Muslims. Benedict sat in silence praying inside Istanbul's Blue Mosque. They were destined to be remembered throughout history, bringing an end to the controversies and manipulations which followed Benedict's Regensburg speech. Ratzinger remained motionless and shoeless. Oh, he took his slippers off. So he's revering now the Muslim site by taking his shoes off. Even worse. Peeping out from under his tunic, his hands were crossed and rested against his gold pectoral cross. Benedict prayed in silence, his face relaxed and his eyes semi-closed. Now and again his lips would move. Yes, he was praying, but he was doing so in a mosque, in front of the mihrab, the marble niche that faces in the direction of Mecca. He was praying aside the Grand Mufti of Istanbul, who had unexpectedly invited him to pray in the mosque towards Mecca. And again, what have we heard? Infinite copes, infinite nonsense to explain this nonsense away. It was all over the media. Now again, this is baffling to me, given the fact that the Roman Catholic Church, Pope Urban II, calling crusades. No, you understand, none of that was even necessary? We didn't need martyrs. We could have just prayed together. Why be a martyr? This is all, by the way, a rejection of fundamental Christian teaching. Daniel, you want to try? You're welcome to try again, bro, but I don't think your microphone works. Hello? Daniel? You're on, man. You keep raising your hand. Well, you're here. Dude, your mic just doesn't work, man. I don't know what to tell you. Maddie, and we'll go to Fade. Okay, it's not Muslim Day, so if the guy with the Arabic script name wants to talk, we're not talking Muslim stuff today. Go ahead, Maddie.
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I'm a former trad cat, became a catechumen here recently, but an argument that I never heard of before is actually with a previous spiritual director of mine. Was, of course, we were talking about going back and forth on Orthodoxy and Catholicism, and naturally he goes straight to apparitions.
You're cutting out, man. Sorry, man. Can't hear any of that. We'll try again. Fade. Rich Beyond Measure, $10. Jay, do you think it's significant that the governance models of Bitcoin and Orthodoxy are the same in a lot of ways? I think there is a lot of insight here with this decentralization. I wouldn't press too much into the comparisons. I think there is a comparison, though. Bitcoin is decentralized. It's a consensus-driven protocol for the memorization of truth. I think there's a lot to it. I'm curious. Yeah, I think absolutely makes sense. Yeah. Craig P., $10. I'm working through Esoteric Hollywood 1. I have a Webster's Dictionary by my side. Pastor Randy Balls drove by in a monster truck, and it collapsed my worldview. Well, that's what you get when you mess with Pastor Balls. You better get ready to have your worldview collapse. Fade, what's up, man?
Can you hear?
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yo, what's up?
Can you do one with the 7 heads?
The one, what do you mean?
The 7-headed beast in Revelation.
Do one what?
The 7-headed beast in Revelation. Can you do one? Space next time.
Oh, I don't know if I have too much to say on that. But I'll think about it. Zaidi. So if you're not here to talk Catholicism, like, it's not Muslim Day, dude. We open it up for Muslims all the time. What's up? Are you there? Can't hear you, man. Mars Monkey.
Yo, what's up? Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Jay, Luigi, and Father Ananias, what's going on? You guys are...
You cut out. Go ahead. You cut out.
All right. Yeah, I was just saying you guys are like the Destiny's Childs of the orthosphere.
Am I Beyonce? Yeah. I'm Beyonce.
I don't know. That's between you guys. So question, what would you say to a Roman Catholic who says, like when you point out a lot of the wild shit that's coming out of the Roman Catholic Church, and they say, oh, we're just in sort of that time period that the church has been in before, where the patriarchs were acting up and the people were on the right side, but the patriarchs were following something else.
Yeah, but that's the Orthodox model. Okay, the Roman Catholic model is not set up that way. And so if all this stuff is coming out of Rome and it's dogmatized by Rome, then that whole model doesn't work. That's a false comparison. You understand? I've got Lumen Gentium and Nostra Aetate up on the screen, and I've had them up for the entire stream here. So this is not just like private opinions of this or that pope or bishop. This is the dogmatic teaching of their church. Anyway, that's what I would say to that. Braden? Now notice that we've had several Roman Catholics have civil conversations. I appreciate that. So this nonsense that I can't have the civil conversation and that I talk over everybody and I don't let them talk. That one dude talked for 40 minutes. Everything was fine. How is that? How did that happen? Braden, you want to unmute?
Hey, hello?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, what's going on?
What's on your mind?
I'm a newly baptized Southern Baptist Christian, and I was wondering what your thoughts on that were.
Well, I mean, we've got a lot of critiques of Protestantism, so I would direct you to those critiques on my channel. But tonight's discussion is Roman Catholicism. So, but yeah, you can check those out. Corbin, did you want to come on? Nick says for $3, what do you think about the OCA Metropolitan T-Con celebrating with Metropolitan Onufri, I think. I wouldn't make too much of it. So, Storm the Cat, $5. Have you seen the movie The Void? Yes. It is a horror movie with a lot of occult Illuminati symbolism. Actually, we did a whole breakdown of it. Jamie and I did I think we did a Void. I think. Or I might have be thinking of just using the imagery from The Void. Corbin?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey.
Hey, yeah, so there was a caller a few callers ago who brought up something I thought was something I found interesting about Roman Catholics is it seems like they have a lot of the same epistemic approach to reading texts as Protestants do.
Yeah. That's exactly the point I was making with the James White thing. They say, well, you just read the documents and they mean what they say and they say what they mean. Like James White says.
Right, you have Lofton insisting that the fiducia supplicans, it's just read the text, it's clear in there. But then you have Trent and the Pints of Aquinas guy, Frad, taking much more cautious or even just outright negative approaches to it.
And you've got Tim Gordon saying the opposite of all of them, that it's contradicting.
Right, and then was it Father Martin? Is that the
Skittles man? Yeah.
Skittles dude. Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to note that. Also, Luigi, I saw you have a debate with Redeem Zoomer coming up. Looking forward to that.
Yes, sir. June 14th on the Crucible. So everybody tune in. It'll be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a great debate. Yeah, great point, Corbin. I hope people understand this point because, this is something that we're constantly stressing, that there's no neutrality, that everything is theory-laden. This goes along with the web of beliefs point that came up at the beginning of this discussion and debate today, that there's no such thing as like these texts that just sort of mean what they say and say what they mean. That all goes along with their self-evidence paradigm, their foundationalist paradigm, their evidentialist paradigm. This is precisely why Trent thinks that the cogito is a solid argument. Mike. What's up, Mike? You gotta unmute, Mike.
Hey, Jay.
Yes, sir.
What's up, guys? So, honest question, do you personally ever see or want a union again with Rome, with us?
No.
Okay. So then what's ultimately the point of, debating and having these discussions?
Well, converting thousands of people from Rome to Orthodoxy, that's what.
Okay. I mean, I would say that there are plenty of, I wouldn't include Orthodox in there, but there are plenty of people becoming Catholic, especially in the United States, every year.
How does that fit into the plummeting vocations, mass attendance, etc.?
Well, I think, I don't know what the numbers are with that specifically, but I know that there are larger numbers within the traditional Catholic community as far as priest-seeking vocations within, let's say, wanting to perform the Latin Mass.
Yeah. What's
growing.
What's Francis think about the Latin Mass?
Well, I mean, he's allowing it as far as not. There are a couple of parishes here in Nashville that now have the Latin Mass that aren't going against their bishop's wishes, and those have been approved by Rome.
Oh, okay. So I thought Francis Francis isn't.
They have to get permission every 18 months. They have to get permission from the Vatican again to continue doing the Latin Mass.
So are those the rules within the church?
What do you mean?
Like there are rules and procedures in order to perform specific types of masses, right? I assume
because
right.
it's not the ordinary mass.
Okay, so we follow rules and procedures. Okay, are there?
Are you arguing that Francis is promoting the Latin Mass?
I'm not arguing that he's promoting it. But if he's allowing Latin masses, I don't see how that's discouraging it.
Oh, you mean like when he said not too long ago that he wants to clamp down on it?
Okay, has he done that if he's still allowing the masses to be performed?
Right, so you got to get permission for the traditional rite every few months, or every, 18 months?
Yeah. Okay, so no union with the Roman Catholic Church again, or with the Catholic Church, because the Pope doesn't want as many Latin masses anymore.
No, we are not saying anything about Latin masses being the reason. There's about 36 things that you guys hold that would have to be rejected before there could be a reunion.
Right. So that's my bigger question. So would you see or want a world in which that happened, where you could say, okay, if we can come to an agreement upon these things.
Now, do you understand that the nature of your system has already solidified its own death? You've dogmatized the worship of a Unitarian deity with Muslims and Jews, and you also actually practice this at the Abu Dhabi Faith Center via Francis. Francis has stacked the deck of the Cardinals that you'll never have a trad pope again, so the whole thing is dead.
Okay, but you know that for sure.
Tell me how it won't be the case.
Well, because I don't know. I can't predict the future.
Okay, so Francis hasn't stacked the deck of Cardinals with libs?
No, that's not what I said.
Okay, so
I don't know.
Is Lumen Gentium 16 and Nostra Aetate dogmatized or not?
So let's not say.
Okay, so you don't want to go to the documents. So you don't. So you want to change the subject. You don't want to go to your actual documents. Why do you guys never want to talk about your documents?
Oh, for fuck's sake! I'm asking you a question about union.
Yeah.
I'm not really talking about the documents right now.
No, you are talking about the documents right now because you asked me specifically why the thing would die, and I said because you've dogmatized these crazy positions.
No, I didn't ask you about anything that would die. All I said was...
You said why would it be that way? Why would I think that?
No, all I said was, would you ever want union with the Catholic Church?
And I said no, and the conversation progressed.
Okay.
So the conversation progressed. No, the conversation. No, you said you're such a. Why are you guys so slimy? You actually said.
What did I say slimy?
You actually. What did I say? This is what you guys always do. Do you want me to? Do you want to point out what you did?
What did I say that? What did I say? You're so slimy. I didn't say that.
No, I said that about you. I said that about you. You're not even listening. Why don't you? Why won't you talk about your documents?
Well, okay. Well, talk specifically about what documents you're talking about. I can go and research them and look at
Lumen Gentium 16 Nostra Aetate. Lumen Gentium 16 Nostra Aetate. They're pulled up right here.
Dude, I'm driving. Like I can't. I'd love to pull over and look at what's on the screen, but right now I just wanted to ask you a question. If you ever,
but that's not what you did. That's and then you also said other things like, oh, so you won't join us because Francis won't have enough Latin masses. When you know that was nothing like what we.
Say that.
Yes, you did. You talked
about conversions from Orthodoxy to Catholicism, and all I said
everybody heard you say that. Why are you saying you didn't say that? You totally said it. You're live on YouTube. You said it.
I said that the numbers of people joining Catholicism in order.
That's not the only thing you said.
Latin Mass was growing.
That's not all you. No, it's not. Now you're lying because that's not all you said.
What else did I say, Jay?
You said, oh, so you guys don't want union because of Latin Masses numbers. That's what you said.
Well, because you brought up...
Oh, so now you did say that.
Jay, what I said what?
Yeah. So let's talk about your documents. Does your church teach that Roman Catholics and Muslims worship the same God?
I believe that's what is in the document that you're referencing.
Yeah, it's in two documents, Lumen Gentium 16 and Nostra Aetate. That's two.
Sure.
Okay. And do you believe that when Francis goes and prays in the mosque towards Mecca and Benedict does the same thing, is that an expression of this belief?
I defer to the dogmatic teachings of the church.
Okay. What I'm saying is that are those actions expressions of this dogma?
What actions? Whose actions?
Did you not hear what I just said? Francis and Benedict praying in the mosque towards Mecca. Is that not an expression of the teaching in these two documents?
Yeah, I don't know. Yes, sure, yeah.
Okay. So why would I want to accept that religion?
Okay, you don't. That's all you had to say. That's literally all you had to say.
I mean, I've been saying it for the last 3 hours there. What do you mean?
I just tuned in for the past 30 minutes.
Excellent.
Yeah, great talk.
Mm-hmm. Paul K.
Yo, hello?
What's up?
Yo, what's up, man? So I actually want to share a text, if I could, against the Catholic position. Is that all right?
Sure.
Yeah, so I mean, I caught this a couple of years ago, actually from John Gill, Baptist commentator, but I think it's true, and it's actually from the Masoretic. In Exodus 33:14, right? And we know the context behind that. I'm not going to mention that, but the verse says, wait, so now I pray you, if I have found favor in your sight, let me know your ways.
You say Exodus 33?
Yeah, 14.
Okay.
And if I found favor in your sight, let me know your ways, that I may know you. See also that this nation is your people. And he said, my presence shall go with you. And that word for presence, we know, like even the Greek prosopon.
It's the angel of the presence.
Well, I mean, again, this isn't in the Greek. I don't think that's a plural. It's not a plural in the Greek, but it's plural in the Hebrew. It's actually panai. It's plural, so faces connection, therefore being the Trinity.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I don't...
No, that's a great passage. Yeah, let me see. Exodus 33.
14.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the Orthodox Study Bible versus the Protestant translation. Yeah, that is interesting. So that would actually be a Masoretic citation proving that distinction, because the angel of the presence is identified elsewhere as the angel of the Lord, the one that he says that he would put his name in.
Right. It's crazy, man.
No, that's really good.
Yeah, I don't understand how they're missing that, but yeah, God bless you, man.
Thank you, man. Really good point. Yeah, I'm going to make a note of that when we do the triad in the Old Testament lectures here. So
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
yeah, the angel of the presence there is, of course, Jesus. Coda?
Hello.
What's up?
I have a question. Can I ask the question and then you clarify if this is like related to the topic, or if not, so I could like go to another
the topic? The topic is just Catholic stuff. Is it related to that?
Yeah, because I was talking with one of my Protestant friends, and basically I was telling him about like the Orthodox and all that, and then basically the question came up that, well, if Catholics were to make the claim that they're the true church, with them having apostolic foundation, being able to predate all the way back to the apostles, then like it's both the truth claim. Like, how would I be able to just like look up and research to find out like which is a true church, since we both make the same claim that we're both apostolic? So I could answer this to my Protestant friend.
You mean how would I decide? Are you saying how would I know between a Roman Catholic and a Orthodox church which one is quote apostolic if they both claim to have apostolic?
Or like which one's a true church? Like which one would be the true church? And like how would we be able to find that out? If we have apostolic foundation.
Right. So the fact that both have things in common doesn't necessarily mean that they're both identical or they possess the same faith. So they depart from easily accessible things like the canons of the first 7 councils. So if you look up the article right here on canons of the councils, this is one of the easiest ways to see that Rome deviated from what was the teaching of the councils and their canons of every single ecumenical council and the mindset of the church in that period. So it's called Ecumenical Canons Refute Papal Supremacy. And that shows us that it's Rome that's deviating. This is one example. There's many examples. This is just one easily accessible example.
All right. And then also, like, just to clarify, just so, like, because I'm not really, like, 100% certain if this is, like, a true, like, thought that I have, but when Christ said that he will give his Holy Spirit and then his Holy Spirit will guide us to truth, his church to truth, was kind of he saying it to the apostles that the church that the apostles will establish and will establish, that he will guide his apostolic church through truth throughout the years and to eternity? Or is it just the group of people? And I don't know, it's kind of like...
Yeah, I think it's spoken to the apostles, and then the apostles, if you read Paul's letters to Timothy, they set up the succession. Luke? You got to unmute.
Hey, am I on?
Uh-huh.
So, I guess I can only ask questions about epistemology if it's like relating to Catholicism. Is that like it has to be relating to Catholicism?
Well, that's the topic today. So what's up?
Oh yeah, I didn't have any questions relating to Catholicism. I was going to ask a question about an epistemic issue because I was discussing.
Well, you got Father Deacon here. He's way better in that than me.
It's with. Well, I guess it relates to epistemology. It was about the essence energy distinction. It was a conversation I was having with some Muslims. It was just a question I had. It's like not like a long question.
Okay. Go ahead.
So basically, what they were asking me, they put me in the VC with them, and they were asking me what necessitates like the that the energies always exist if they're what actualizes them is their interactability or their knowability. That's kind of what they were asking, and I was trying to explain to them that really wasn't what actualizes them.
Whether they're knowable or not, this is why Palamos makes a distinction between the energies that are applicable to the economia and the energies that are the case and have always been. So, for example, God has forever been manifesting his glory. He has not forever been creating. So creating is a specific action, and it's distinct from the manifestation of divine glory or divine love, which do not depend upon a created order. The action of creating is relative to the created order coming to be.
Yeah. So that's what I was trying to explain to them, but I don't think I explained it to them well enough, because they kept kind of asking me, like, what gives the energies their, like, being, and is it, like, their knowability factor that, and so then if we don't know about them in, like, a certain instance, they don't exist.
Basil says God has infinite powers and energies.
Yeah.
So they've got it backwards.
Right.
It was interesting. I was just talking with this in the Discord server with a gentleman, that what gives them their being is not their knowability.
Yeah.
Typically in philosophy, what can be known is equivalent with being, which is why exactly that we make the essence energy distinction, that, well, then God's essence is not being because it's beyond what could possibly be known.
Well, yeah, just because we know about them doesn't mean that when we don't know about them, they're not, like, even existing.
Yeah, they're not.
That was a dumb argument. That's what I thought, too.
We're not like Berkeley idealists or something like that.
Well, the way he was framing it, he was, like, talking really fast, and I just didn't know. Like, it sounded like what he was saying was beyond what I understood, but then when I thought about it, I was like, this is, like, a really, really dumb argument.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
A lot of times people don't even know what they're actually saying.
Yeah.
So they'll parrot stuff that they hear.
Right.
And so I think it's just helpful, even before you have a criticism or an argument or anything like that, just get them to unpack it. And what you'll find, just like Socrates, is these people don't know what they're talking about. This is what Socrates, right? Like, well, what do you mean by that? And they don't know what they're talking about. They're just using words and phrases.
All right, so this is last call for Roman Catholic alcohol. Anybody else left? We're not going to Muslims and Protestant talk stuff. Ignacio Larios, patristic pillar claims at some point Orthodoxy accepted filioque. I don't know who patristic pillar is. They also accepted Immaculate Conception. No, I mean, I don't know what that's. Again, where? It's about Florence. Florence doesn't mean they accepted it. Daniel, every time you try to come on, man, your mic's not working. I don't know what to tell you.
Hello?
Hey.
Can you finally hear me?
Yeah, man, what's up?
Okay, so let's go with, I was trying to call you, but then my microphone wasn't working, so.
It's okay.
Okay, yeah, let's go. So, typical criticism you have for the papists is that they have to, like, interpret the Pope, right? So they have to read their own presuppositions into the papal documents, encyclicals, and stuff like that, right?
Right.
Okay, so how? I don't understand. Like, how does your position not have the exact same problem?
Well, I don't make the argument that the papacy functions as a kill shot to know the faith and to give me certitude, and that is precisely what Roman Catholics typically argue.
Okay, so how can you be sure that you're interpreting canon law, scripture, ecumenical councils correctly?
Well, the question is not how do we derive certitude, because everybody's in the same boat, right? The question is that we have to have a different model for how we come to know those things, because whether you're Roman Catholic or Orthodox or Protestant, everybody will say at the end of the day it's the Holy Spirit that's kind of like the final teacher. So the question is the difference of means. So what we differ on with the Roman Catholic is that they have different means. They have trying to work through all these papal documents, having to do all this work to try to figure out whether they're putting tens of thousands of pages of documents into the right bins, whereas we have a totally different paradigm where that's not a problem for us because we're not hanging everything on the magisterial teachings of one dude.
Can I add add something too, because when this gentleman was just saying this, thank you for your questions. It made me think about something in epistemology when we're teaching in class. So there's something about Roman Catholicism seems thoroughly modern in terms of epistemology. So, for example, a modern epistemological problem that came up from Descartes is the only type of knowledge that you could have is this kind of indubitable absolute certitude.
Yeah.
Which once philosophers just got a little hand on that, realized how absurd this is. So wait a minute. If that were the case, you basically wouldn't be able to have any knowledge whatsoever. So it's what we call the kind of the strong position, that in order to have a true belief that's justified, it has to be indubitable, and you have to have absolute. Well, that's just absurd. And in fact, if you actually applied it, nobody would be able to be justified in anything. And so I didn't even make the connection until you just said that Roman Catholics, because you don't find this in antiquity at all, but Roman Catholics embrace this kind of modern Cartesian epistemology of like indubitability, that like the only thing you could ever be like have knowledge in and be justified in believing are things that you have absolute indubitable.
Yeah, but the irony is that the papacy can't even grant you that.
The papacy doesn't even provide that.
Right.
That's what's funny is, so it's a defeater in two sense. Not only is it just theoretically absurd and impractical and nothing that anybody ever lives by, the thing that they propose to then actually offer that doesn't even meet the standards they set out.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Okay, so you said like text have like you read a bunch of sentences in a text, right? They can have multiple different meanings. So are you saying you can never really truly know if you know that
No, not saying that at all.
Thinking this, I've had arguments with people about this all the time, that you can't truly know unless you have absolute certitude is insane. So we can know things even though we may not have absolute certitude. Does that make sense?
Yes, but so I just use my own rationale to tell if something means what it means.
Well, it's not just a matter of your own rationality. I mean, again, all of us would argue, whether you're Roman Catholic, Orthodox, or Protestant, everybody believes that the Holy Spirit, at the end of the day, is the final teacher that gives us knowledge of the Trinity and God and Christ and all that. So that's not the issue. The issue is that Roman Catholicism is a system which has a specific method by which you get the certitude, which doesn't work. That's the critique. So we're not saying that we don't have to read documents or we don't have to... can you mute, man? It's really loud background.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. Yeah, so we're not saying that we don't have to engage in, reading the Bible or reading the Church Fathers or going to the liturgy or whatever to gain that knowledge. The point is that Roman Catholicism offers and prefers a system by which you can have this and have this certitude, and it doesn't work. That's the critique. It's not saying that we don't have a duty as an individual to study the text, or that you can't know what the texts mean when you read them. None of that's part of what we're arguing.
And we're not giving like a kind of more Protestant subjective that it's just only your rational faculties.
It's different means, yeah.
There are different means. There are objective standards, and it's not pinpointed as if the papacy would present it on actually one condition, which doesn't even work, as Jay had pointed out. There's multiple causes, objectively speaking, by which the Holy Spirit would objectively, in synergy with the subject, work to obtain knowledge.
So another question, right? So
well, hold on. We got a guy that wants to come on. Who's then they left. So somebody came on here requesting 1 million times to speak, and then they dropped off. So this is the last chance for Roman Catholics who want to come on and present an argument. You request to speak, I'll bring you on. Is that all the super chats? Looks like it's all the super chats. Anybody else? Last chance? before we close it out? Mars Monkey, you already came on. It has to be about Catholicism. All right, I don't see anybody else popping on. Thank you guys. Be sure and head over to chalk.com. Show sponsor. And have a good evening.